A march for the championship continues with one race remaining until 10 can call themselves playoff eligible. One race to decide them all, and with a regular season opener comes a regular season closer from the World Center of Racing. Welcome to live coverage of the 2021 Four Wide Racing Cup Series regular season finale, the 18th race of the campaign from the virtual Daytona International Speedway right here on MaxSpeedTV. Always happy to have you join us, and happy that you've been with us for 17 races up until this point, with only one more before the playoffs begin. Hello everyone, Kenneth Bueno alongside Francisco Bacallao for this one. We'll have Francisco join us in just a handful of moments, but tonight brings forward the conclusion of the regular season. We've been all through the races. Everything has been grueling. Everything's been tight. We've seen some fantastic races and multiple different winners, a fight within the point standings, and now we get to settle it all, finally slim it down to only 10 drivers with a shot at a championship when we at least conclude this race and head for Richmond next Wednesday night. So tonight will be very, very big for many of the drivers, and coming here at Daytona, it will be a masterful one, considering we're under the lights. We were here to start this season under daylight conditions, so we return back to the famed super speedway to cap it all off and then begin our playoff trot. And speaking of Daytona, before we get more into our pre-race coverage and so forth, we'll take a look as to where we are in the virtual world as we look at our track map courtesy of Google Earth and their images. So sprint down to Daytona Beach, Florida, sunny side Daytona Beach, Florida, the east side of the state of Florida, Daytona Beach, Florida, right there. 2.5 miles, 4.023 kilometers, with banking at about 31 degrees in each turn, 18 degrees in the tri-oval, and only 2 degrees down the back straightaway. Seems as though it is very easy from a first glance, just along straightaways, just your foot to the floor, and just turning left. But there's going to be a lot of strategy games. There's going to be a lot of mindsets being tested here at this very racetrack, and knowing that what we have at stake, and of course some drivers looking for their first wins as well, even though a handful of them may be locked into the playoffs. And speaking of the playoffs, we'll have our points lined up for you as they stand. These are everybody within the top 10. So as of right now, if you see the drivers right there with the asterisk next to their name, that means they are officially locked in. So going into this race, coming out of last week's event at Phoenix Raceway, we have 9 official drivers locked in to the playoffs. So no matter what happens here tonight, no matter if they end up falling through the race, ending up in an incident, whatever may have you, they will end up still playoff eligible. The final driver, though, that needs to lock himself in tonight and possibly may be at risk is the 42 of Christopher Bishop. He's only 24 points ahead of 10th. And remember, we still have a lot of other drivers that could lock themselves in with a checkered flag. So although it seems pretty daunting that we may not have any newcomers head into the playoff picture, we definitely can find one driver that can spoil the other 9 and potentially be a surprise playoff driver when we move forward. And speaking of which, we have a lot to look forward to, a lot to come into this racetrack, and of course the playoffs starting next Wednesday. That's going to provide a lot of the tension here for what we're going to see moving forward. And back here at Daytona, we had a fantastic one in the end. It ended on fuel strategy to start this race, where Tyler Warner was the eventual winner. That's his only win so far this season, though he is locked into the playoffs with that win and with his consistency all season long. So I think that's going to help him significantly. And he's also got a shot to also defend his win, along with Scott Healy, the winner from last Wednesday night at the Phoenix Raceway. He was looking off of a dominant short track victory, leading 150 of the 200 laps onto his second win of 2021, his only other one coming at Dover. And we'll be talking about a lot of the playoff drivers when we move a little bit more forward within this race. However, qualifying has come to a close. The timer starts to tick all the way down to 0, and we are ready to get things started from the World Center of Racing and get you focused on what will be the starting grid here tonight. We'll take a look at it. We'll see you exactly where every driver and your favorite driver will be starting here tonight from Daytona, the final race of the regular season. On pole will be the 73 of Dustin Webb, the first time we see him on pole this season, alongside the driver I just mentioned, winner at Phoenix last week, Scott Healy in the 64 will line the outside of your first row when we go green. Nicholas Vizzucci will be behind him in third. Brian M. Smith returns to the series. He's already got 2 wins to his category. He's got one at the road course here at Daytona, and he's got the one at Las Vegas, 1.5 miler. He's looking for his first super speedway win of the season. He'll line up the outside of row 2. Justin Mons in the 41 will be in the top 5, and Tyler Murray himself, he's locked into the playoffs. He has no worries going into tonight. He will be 6 when we roll off for green. Points leader, though, Kyle Benson will be from 7th here on the grid with a 48.943, and Ricky Rosner in the 43 will be next to him on the outside in P8. 9th will belong to the 9 car, Brendan Gillis, and Christopher Bishop. We talked about him, only 24 points ahead of the cutoff. We'll be keeping an eye on him as he starts from the exit of row 5. Craig Lonsugger will be behind him. Cody Ivey in the 81 will line up the 12th position. Then Pete Bruni, Brandon Banks all the way back to 14th. Bruni, as you see, the only driver, or the last driver rather, to take time. Brandon T. Banks, everybody else, did not decide to qualify. Eric Schaffer will be the top 15 on the grid. Joey Saguiped returns to the series. Good to see him back in the 5 machine, lining up the outside of row number 8. Then Matt Roberts, Edward Scher to the 20 machine will be 18. Tyler Warner, the defending winner at this track, will be mired back in the field, 19th. He's got some work to do. Cody Kinsey will be in the 93 car to the outside. He will conclude your top 20 on the grid. CJ Munier will be 21st alongside Chris Massey in 83, followed by Michael Newbraw and Eric Stewart in the 99, returning for 24th position. 25th and final driver on the grid will be the 6th of Robert Pera. That will be your final drivers here on the grid tonight, as the field will roll off at the moment. They'll follow the iRacing official pace car, the new sedan introduced into the recent season build. You'll see everybody positioning themselves along the track as we get ready to go green. Take a look at the weather of what we got over in the skies at about a temperature of 74 degrees of our track temperature, just a hair over 76 degrees, only 2-degree difference between the two. Humidity at about 1% with winds southeast at 11 miles per hour. I think a fairly high winds for what we've seen this season. That could also come into consideration for some of the handling that we'll see with these high downforce, low horsepower race cars when we get for tonight's action. So everybody will line up behind Dustin Webb. Again, this will be our final regular season event, so of course we are happy to have you join us. And of course, a quick preview for Memorial Day weekend. Now that's going to be a very fun one, and we hope you have a safe and happy Memorial Day weekend. And of course, a thank you to all the armed forces, the brave people that keep us safe and make all the sacrifices so we are able to live our lives freely. A big thank you to all of them. We'll give our thanks more so when we end this race and give our final thoughts coming out of Daytona. I think it's kind of similar that we see Daytona as the regular season finale going into this race in the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, but also more fitting than the fact that we're closer to a special holiday, special national holiday. Of course, we usually see July 4th being the start there, but I guess for the most part, we'll be having our sort of memorial celebration here from Daytona. 25 cars lined up on the grid. Dustin Webb and Scott Healy, Ford Mustang, Chevrolet Camaro to lead us to the green flag, and we are underway for the final regular season race of the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series. Clear through the back straightaway. No one seems to be in trouble. The 73 of Dustin Webb leading the way right now, but you can see Scott Healy, him and Brian Smith are trying to form some sort of tandem here on the top of the racetrack. Seems to be no success as they have no help behind. Inside line is predominant. Dustin Webb will have a clear nose out front. He'll continue to hold on to the race lead as they complete lap number 1. And almost clear, we're going to see some of the distinctions here at Daytona as they step back to the 31-degree banking. Seems as though the top side is going to find themselves in maybe some sort of rhythm. Scott Healy is going to find help. Maybe Brian Smith will not be there. He'll duck down low. Ricky Rosner and a handful of others going to pick him up and will try to form some sort of momentous run down to the outside, or at least up to the outside. Healy will choose to go back down low. We'll see how things fare once other drivers try to make some moves. But over the course of the first 2 laps, I think the motive for a lot of drivers for the most part is just to keep their noses clean. It seems as though they haven't kept it clean just yet. Caution flag waves first time this evening, and it is the driver that we've been talking about for the start of the race. They were actually near the rear. We just saw them. That was the 42 of Christopher Bishop, involved in the first incident. Saw Ricky Rosner with some damage. His car might have been skewed with the suspension a little bit. You see a special paint scheme that the 42 is rocking tonight under the lights here at Daytona. Early trouble for him at lap number 2. He's going to have to easily go down pit road. Not sure whether he's going to go for a fast repair early on in this race. However, it's going to be a tough one to sort off. We're going to try to find a replay, see exactly where this began with the 42. That was actually a very big crash behind them, and you'll see it up the field. It started around here. There is the 13 of Craig Lautensager, the 42 Christopher Bishop. They end up in an incident here. We'll see how this began. It was going out of turn 3 and 4. There was a contact. Ricky Rosler got collected with Brandon Gillis and went back up the track. Craig Lautensager goes tumbling over the racetrack in the banking in 3 and 4. You'll see it once more as Lautensager's view. He gets tagged along, goes right for the outside safer barrier, and goes for a wild ride. We'll try to see where the 42 ends up here, as he was just I believe a victim to this one. He just got bumped all the way to the side. Almost had a meeting with the inside wall, but a couple of drivers involved in this one early. Reckon a lot of them will have to burn off this fast repair, and that is not what they want to see for 100 laps, especially the fact that there's only 97 laps left in this one. So a lot of drivers in trouble to start this race off, and I think it'll be fitting now to bring in our co-host of the evening, Francisco Bacchiao. Francisco, no, we didn't get our introductory thoughts in, but now that at least we've got the first 3 laps underway, how did you feel this race was going to fare out, considering it's the final regular season event? We'll be crowning 10 playoff drivers eligible after the end of tonight's race.
Well, thanks for having me up here, Kenneth, for this evening. And that first wreck that we just saw there is exactly how I think this night is going to go. It's going to be absolutely chaotic. We know there's guys that are trying to make a last push to get into the playoffs, guys that are willing to try and win this race. And just the nature of Daytona itself, especially under the lights. I mean, we've seen it over the years as the years have gone by that Daytona under the lights produces great racing, but also a lot of wrecks. And tonight, I think will be no different than just that, because a lot is on the line. People are going to try to win this race, and with this recent change that iRacing's had to this plate package, it has the new side drafting model to it, so you can actually go up next to a car and really pull them back. So if you're able to get next to somebody, that's going to be very interesting to see in the closing laps of this race, how someone utilizes that side draft to their advantage.
And we'll be talking about that over the course of the night, and I'm sure a lot of people will be at least curious. And I know a lot of them being iRacing users. I know these guys have already had their hands a couple of months already at this new package, but it was recently introduced in March of this year as a part of the new update, with a lot of the racetracks 1.5 models got their treatments with some of their parameters, or their surface parameters, and then the Super Speedway model for the Cup Series got reintroduced, or at least got introduced to everybody on the service, a new way to super speedway race, and that wasn't visible when we started this season back in January, or at least, yes, January or February, around there, when we started this season here at Daytona. You could not barely see that sort of super speedway model because it hadn't been introduced yet. We were still sort of accustomed to the tightly packed in. It wasn't very side drafty. You couldn't really be able to get those runs. You'd have to kind of push your way through the field, and there was a lot more, at least sort of give, I'd say, with that model, because if you made a mistake, you can easily get back into it in contention with the way that you can build up runs in these cars and be able to stay tightly within packs. We've seen 2x2, 3x3. There is so many ways into which you can create a pack in that old model, but with this new one, it's a little harder to do so. So I figure with that new model, we're going to have a lot of more strategic moves to the front rather than just blind moves up there. And I figure for Justin Webb, he's probably comfortable right now because he was able to hold on to the lead, keep everybody tucked in behind. But now he's going to have a restart here, so I guess maybe he could be under some more pressure.
Yeah, I mean, the lead will always be under pressure for the rest of the evening. I mean, being in the lead is an advantage and it's also a disadvantage. You can control which lane gets the run by placing your car in front of it. You can kind of arrow block the guy, but you're going to be at a disadvantage because you burn the most fuel. People can always get a run on you at any time, and it's just you have to be able to play your cards right when you're out front, and it's not everybody can do it. We saw Dale Earnhardt Jr. be able to play the Pied Piper. He was one of the best at doing it, and occasionally sometimes you see drivers like Denny Hamlin or Joey Logano on the real life side be able to do just that. It is not for everyone, and it's not easy to accomplish, and we'll have to see who can do that here tonight as we're getting ready for the restart on lap 5 of 100.
Gonna be ready for our restart. First caution was on lap 2. First restart here on lap number 6. Green flag waves once again from Daytona. Dustin Webb gonna have a seemingly easy start, but I don't believe he's gonna be met with no pressure because here comes Nicholas Vizzuti. He had a strong restart as well. Gonna have help from the aid of Tyler Murray, and now both of them will be 2 by 2 as they head back to turn 1 and 2 to the back straightaway.
Vizzuti trying to take his wings to the front of the field, but he's unable to get ahead of Dustin Webb, and he's still leading that outside lane as it looks a little bit tighter. We see a couple cars trying to drop to the back, a couple more moving to the inside lane, so you're able to see people doing different strategies. Some want to lay further back in the field, others want to be up front. And you see right there, the 75 got next to the 73 and immediately was able to get side by side with him, and that's down to that side draft. So now that he's next to him, they can sort of stall each other out, and that won't allow either one to get by until one eventually does. You see right here, he's going to try and get close to the quarter panel, but he doesn't want to side draft himself because that could happen with the 41. So right there, he did it just fine, and they're still side by side for the lead.
And that's the thing we're going to see over the course of the night too, Francisco, is you see how the 75 positioning himself. He's making small but crucial movements in order to create a side draft and hopefully make this second line work as he's stalling out a little bit. Most of the guys on the inside will start to find their way through, but you see how much space he's giving the driver, the 73, or at least that he gave him on the restart. He did not try to stay tucked into his quarter panel, and he wants to stay up the track, create that movement to where he can side draft a little bit, then push up, be away, so that doesn't let the 73 come back at him and potentially stall them both out. As you see, now behind them, that move didn't really seem to work out too well, as he's only crept in amongst the top 5. Brian M. Smith tried to take a look up high, had no luck, and now he's going to try it once more. And I think we may have another battle for the race lead if we have enough drivers tucked up to the top.
You see right there on that 41, he made a good side draft, and he's able to stay right next to him, and that gives that inside lane a little bit of a break. Let's see if Vizzuti can give him a push, and something that the driver in front can do, they can let off of the throttle trail brake a little bit to let the car behind get on their bumper, and once they get connected, it's very hard to come off. And there you see he gets right next to the 73, trying to side draft him a little bit, seeing if he can stay right on the quarter panel. See, driving down the racetrack, trying to get right next to him, and I think they're going to be side by side for the lead coming off turn 4. So that's exactly what you have to do if you want to take over this lead.
And Brian M. Smith going to use that aggression to push to the front, use that outside. The first time we see a lead change so far, and it comes very early in this race. Brian M. Smith going to go way down to the double yellow line back to turn 1, and he's going to tag along Nicholas Vizzuti. And both of the two drivers sporting new cars and new paint schemes for tonight's action. They're going to be right to the front of this field, even though we're only about 9 laps in. And some of the previous looks that we've seen, drivers within the top 2, they both are race winners, and they both have 2 wins respectively on the season. Brian M. Smith, he's running the 78 tonight. He won here at this track, but on the road course configuration earlier this season. He's got that win along with that 1.5 mile win at Las Vegas not too long ago. So he's looking for a trifecta dub. Get the win at the Super Speedway, complete that sort of trio of types of races, and Nicholas Vizzuti is still looking for his win on a track larger than 1 mile. He got a win at New Hampshire earlier this season. That was his first one of 2021, and then got the second one of the campaign at a chaotic Martinsville race at the half-miler. So he is still showing some of that promise, Francisco. And we've seen it over the course of this season. I think a Super Speedway win to cap off the season, go straight into the playoffs, gives a lot of momentum for sure.
Any Super Speedway win could be a huge win, especially if you're running up front the entire race and staying out of trouble, because you just feel so confident in your ability to go out there and just be able to make these moves, run up front with these guys, and avoid all the wrecks at the same time, because it's just very hard to accomplish. Not many people can run up front in the entirety of a plate race, miss the trouble, and still come away with the race win, because you've seen it almost every single time. There's always a big wreck taking out several cars in chunks at the end of the race or even at the beginning of the race. So to do that, and be able to come away with the win, it's definitely a momentum builder for a guy or two. So right now, if you have 2 wins and you're Brian M. Smith, or if you have 2 wins and you're Nicholas Vizuzzi, this could be a very big win if once you enter the playoffs.
And again, we mentioned earlier tonight, 9 drivers are locked in, and at least the drivers here, the 75 Vizzuti, he knows he's locked in. Kyle Benson, points leader, he knows he's also locked into the playoffs, and about 7 other drivers know that they're locked in, up until Christopher Bishop, who we saw get into that incident. As a report for him, he currently rides at the edge of the top 20. He's the last car in this long line of vehicles, starting with Cody Ivy in 14. So they're already starting a second pack, potentially a strategy move if we continue to stay green. And already you're seeing this, Francisco, the way that the drivers have to methodically make passes, working back to our point of sort of the aero structure that comes with these cup cars and the model played here at super speedways. You have to be more meticulous as to where you go with a strategy, because if you just swing yourself up top, you're kind of going to be hoping falsely that somebody goes up with you, and even if you do have somebody to help you, it's not probably going to be enough to get around the leader. You have to put your car in certain positions to get there to the end, get to the front, and make a pass complete like what we saw with Brian M. Smith. So with this new model, it's forcing these drivers to think differently about where they're going, how they're going to do it, and what motives they're going to use to get there in the super speedway model. Is that what you're seeing right now? Nobody wants to do anything, and we're staying single file so far.
You're going to need car count in order to make moves, and that's partially due to the fact that there's now an aero bubble between these cars. That's why you see nobody really getting bumper to bumper anymore, unless, as you previously mentioned, the car in front decides they're going to brake a little bit, trail brake, to allow the rear car to get to the bumper. You see right here, maybe Tyler Murray and Edward Scherner are going to try to do that, but it doesn't really work. As you see him tucked right behind Scott Healy here, going back to the inside after losing a couple positions. But Kenneth, you see, as we're on board with him, he's unable to get to the rear bumper of the 64, when previously we saw that he was able to get right up there and push him into the other guy, and they're just able to stay nose to tail several cars without issue. But now it's like, if you get this close to the car in front, it struggles, and your car will actually slow down despite you being in full throttle. And I mean, it's just interesting the approach that iRacing took to revamping this restrictor plate model to have it this way. It used to be like this when they had the smaller spoiler, but we've seen the sort of change that happened when they moved to the big spoiler, and they were able to produce the kind of racing we saw last time that we were on the big oval of the Daytona and Talladega. So a big change, but it is driving relatively how they used to, and now drivers have to adapt to that new way of driving these plate tracks, and it's just fun to watch them try to learn.
And as you heard there, as you were riding on board with the cockpit of the 8 machine Tyler Murray, he was letting off the throttle. He's in the midst of this long line of cars, all the way tucked into the double yellow line. But remember, these guys are checking up because they don't want to get into each other and potentially either quote-unquote push the pusher or do something and maybe detrimental. If they hook the bumpers the wrong way, they could end up in trouble. So they don't want to have that happen so early in this race, and they don't want to have it to happen, period, of course, in this entire run. They want to be clean all the way to the end, but that's why you're hearing a lot of drivers lay off the throttle, and that was a big moment there. Even bigger, though, behind him, Tyler Murray just got turned around. He gets hit by Pete Bruni. Does the second pack get collected in? Doesn't seem to be the case. They start to slow down. Caution waves for the second time this evening, and as we were just talking about the 8 of Tyler B. Murray, he ends up in the second incident of tonight's coverage.
And you can see that happening when they were starting to stack up. Scott Healy moved up out of line to try and avoid coming down on somebody, and as that line was checking up to try and let him back in, somebody didn't check up, and that's where this all started. We'll try and get a look from above to see just how this all unfolded, because you see right there the 64 moves up and the 4 checks up for him, but further behind it doesn't really get all the way back there, and somebody, and I believe that's the 20 of Edward Scherner, who runs in just barely into the left rear of the 8, and a great job by Tyler to try and hang on. It's just Pete Bruni had nowhere to go right there and sent him spinning around, but a great job by this 8 to not hit the wall.
And you'll see it once more as we look along with the 20 of Edward Scherner. It starts right here. The 8 gets swung up the track, and then right here, the 33 of Warner gives a shove to the 20. It seemed as though it might have been fine, but it comes at the wrong time, because as soon as they make contact, that pushes Scherner into the slowed Murray, and then Murray, of course, gets turned around, and then at that point, he's trying to keep it off of the wall, and then Pete Bruni kind of gives him a hip check or at least a hit movement there, sort of a T-bone hit. If you see it structured right about there to the quarter panel, he hits him as he was trying to slow down for the incident. And again, very tough. This is our second incident of the night that does involve a driver, though, tucked into the top 10 in the playoffs. Luckily for Tyler B. Murray, he is locked in. As right now, drivers spread to pit road. We have a lot of drivers going in. One driver making a different strategy. That's the 5 of Joey Sagwiped, the first one off pit road. Seems as though everybody else is going to stay in for the moment.
We're going to see varying strategies all night, Kenneth. As you know, with the super speedways, we'll see guys doing fuel only. We'll see others take 2 tires, and maybe some people who want to try and, you know, restart a little bit further back and get a gist of what it's like to take 4 tires and also provide themselves with an opportunity to do this strategy later in the race. But we see Joey Sagwiped most likely did fuel only. He'll go out and go as your race leader in that Kyle Busch patriotic M&M's scheme that he'll be running for the Coca-Cola 600 this upcoming weekend. And I know you touched on it probably before you went green there, Kenneth, but I'm excited for Memorial Day weekend this upcoming weekend. It's always a good time to celebrate those who defend our country with the stars and stripes and risk their lives so that we can have a life of our own. And, you know, I personally feel like we should always celebrate the military, but it's always fun to do so on Memorial Day weekend, just knowing that there's racing going on this weekend, basketball playoffs going on. Just Memorial Day weekend is definitely one of those weekends that you just enjoy being with your family and celebrating the lives of those who allow us to live the way we do.
Yeah, it's a very special weekend nonetheless. A lot of these drivers, not only in the sim, but in real life as well, are going to be sporting very, very special paint schemes, and I figure a lot of them going to have banners for the veterans that they are honoring as they're going down. But as a report for Joey Sagwiped, you see him going down pit road. Your eyes are not deceiving you. He actually missed his stall when he was down pit road. It was recognized as no time in his stall, so it seems as though he didn't quite get his pit stall found on pit road, and that's why he's going to be making this stop now. So it'll cycle Brian M. Smith back to the race lead. He had not the fastest pit stop of them all, but his positioning on pit road certainly helped his case. The fastest one behind him was Justin Mons. He was 7 seconds flat, along with Craig Launsarger. Those two probably went for fuel only. Reckon a lot of drivers don't necessarily look for tires. Dustin Webb had a 14.8 second pit stop, so I believe he's one of the only drivers at least to go for 4 tires and fuel in this top 5. Apart from everybody in the rear, a lot of them took 4 tires and fuel as well. With Tyler B. Murray, I believe he burned off his faster pair. That'll be the first faster pair. Actually, he did not burn the faster pair, so he's clinging on to it for now as the damage proceeds. But to work back toward your point, Francisco, about how special Memorial Day weekend is, it's going to be so much fun. I know we don't necessarily have Monaco on this given Sunday because it was last Sunday, but it is still nonetheless going to be a special weekend. We're going to have the Indianapolis 500 for the afternoon, and then we'll swing right into the nighttime. We'll have the Coca-Cola 600 and the iRacing Coca-Cola 600 is happening right now. Fixed NAS just ended not too long ago. Started at about 5 p.m. Eastern, and then we're going to have Thursday night action NIS. That's going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern if anyone's curious to run it. I know, Francisco, you're going to be there, so
Yep.
I wish you the best of luck. That's not an easy race to do.
I know. It's going to be a long night for myself tomorrow night, but I'm going to spend most of my afternoon just mentally being ready for that long night. It's going to take at least 4 hours, but we have something to do before any of that. The green flag is getting ready to wave. Brian M. Smith is leading the field, and we're going to go back racing from the World Center of Racing. A little bit of a slow, shaky start there. You saw him get on the apron. That's going to allow the 41 to have a little bit of a run as they work their way into the exit of the trial.
Clean start by the front row. They're going to gridlock as they head back to turn 1. Justin Mon's going to have the advantage barely with help from about 3 other cars, 73, 75, and the 20 of Edward Scher. We'll see if they get any more drivers up there, but as for the moment, the bottom seems to be the predominant line throughout this entire track. Look at Dustin Webb making a 3-wide move. He doesn't want anything to do with Justin Mons right now. He's had enough of it. He's going to split him right through the sucker hole, and Dustin Webb goes to the front of the outside lane. I think they may have lost some time for the drivers down low, though.
He may have scrubbed the wall just a little bit in trying to make that move and not hit the 41 of Dustin Webb, but there you see the inside lane prevailed throughout the entirety of all that because they stayed hooked up while the outside was fighting with one another. And look at what it did to that outside lane. It's just completely dissolved them, and now they're just continuing to lose spots, and this has just worked out for everybody who restarted on that inside lane.
A lot of drivers down the inside lane. They're going to form this single file train once more. You're going to see some new drivers now find their way into the mix. One of them being a driver involved in the first incident of tonight's event. Went tumbling over the field in turn 4. And now it seemed as though, blink of an eye, he's got a fresh race car. He did indeed burn his fast repair, but the driver that won at Iowa earlier this season is definitely back in contention. He's just got to be a little more careful over the next 80 laps or so if he wants to stay in it. And again, that pushes it back, and I think you can compare it much like the 2 races we're going to be seeing this weekend, Francisco, the Coca-Cola 600, the Indianapolis 500, 2 distinct races, 2 memorable races that we see fall into different drivers' hands for the win for many different reasons, because you have to keep yourself, number 1, clean, but number 2, mentally focused at all times. And I figure here at a super speedway, I know it's probably not as difficult, but with the way that you're going with the high speeds, with the way you have to kind of plan out your moves, especially with the aero model, these drivers are probably in the same mindset as a lot of them working for the weekend's events.
Yeah, and also just like last weekend at the Monaco Grand Prix, it's just all these racetracks, especially when they're so lengthy and so technical that you have to do specific things at a specific time in order to maintain focus and concentration, and at the same time be quick. It takes a lot on a driver, and you think a long time has passed, and then you look up and it's only halfway or a quarter of the way, and you still have all this time left to go, and it could be very tough for someone. You see him move for the lead there. Kyle Benson, the inside of the 78, he's going to try and side draft back. And this is part of that plate racing that we're talking about with this new package that we're able to have. Brian M. Smith able to have a little bit of momentum, and he'll keep the race lead after nearly losing it.
And Brian M. Smith saw the run up high, decided to go with them. That was Cody Kinsey, and that is Cody Kinsey leading that high side, going almost for the race lead. He had a moment, had a bit of a push from the 41 of Justin Mons, along with the 9 of Brandon Gillis. And the outside will stall once more, and Kyle Benson, who tried to make a move down low, not going to be successful just yet. He'll have to hit the reset button, try it once more, as Smith retains the race lead. And so many of the drivers we're talking about here tonight, a lot of them being playoff contenders, and of course Kyle Benson is one to mention, the driver who's led points since about the 2nd race of the season. Tyler Warner has held it after his win at Daytona to start 2021 in the campaign, but for the 4 of Kyle Benson, he has been hard at work. His consistency has paid off. He's racked up a lot of top 5s, top 3s, top 10s. He's also got a win in his belt as well at the Charlotte Roval earlier this season. He's the points leader going into tonight. He already knew he was locked in about 2 races ago, but at this point, Kyle Benson seems as though he's running as if he's got nothing to lose.
And he really doesn't. I mean, he's got his win. He's been the points leader. He's basically here to win a race and try and get more playoff points. That's what he's here for, and why not? I mean, why run in the back for most of this race if you can just have fun and run up front here? And you might learn something in the future, whether it's in this series, whether it's in another series, because you never stop learning. So right now, he is running second behind your race leader, and maybe he's trying to figure out what he can do later on in the race in order to make the pass, or see what happens in a certain situation if he gets too close, if he gets too far, if the car behind gets too close or gets too far. He's going to collect this data, and as the race continues to play on and the end of the race gets near, he's going to use what he's learned in order to try and win this race for himself. And we see up front, just like that, a little bit of a 6-car breakaway before you get to Nicholas Vizuzzi, who's trying to chase down this pack as he was side by side battling for the 4th spot about a lap ago, but immediately that outside lane sort of fell apart, and now they're back to single file, sort of strung out a little bit as they're starting to get to the tail end of that group.
Well, the first quarter of this race is complete. Your first 25 laps have been with 2 yellows so far, and you're looking at a driver with a very commemorative paint scheme to the veterans and, of course, the armed forces. That is the 42 of Christopher Bishop. We saw him involved in the first accident tonight. He was 24 points ahead of the cutoff going into tonight's race, so he just needs a very solid run to the end in order to lock himself in and call himself a member of at least the playoff 10, the 10 drivers that will be fighting for the championship next week, starting at the Richmond Raceway when we get started next Wednesday night. But for the 42, he's already burned that fast repair, and a good pickup for him nonetheless. Has already put himself in the top 10. There seems to be one driver, though, falling back up ahead in a fairly noticeable paint scheme that we've seen before in the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, driven by Bubba Wallace a couple years back. Tyler Warner, Daytona winner, he seems to be falling back. He wants nothing to do with the top runners right now.
And while we're on the topic of paint schemes, I've been looking at a couple of cars here tonight, and both schemes that I seem to have my attention drawn to are due to biases. You see right there, Nicholas Vizuzzi, the 75, the Red Bull scheme. You know I have several Red Bull schemes that I've run over my career. That and the 20 of Edward Scherner in a Miami Vice looking scheme. I'm not exactly sure what the sponsor on that car is, but it does have those Vice colors on it on the Rowdy Energy scheme actually. So it looked at that pink and blue and purple car. It's a very good looking scheme, I might say. So those two are definitely biases of mine, but they're still good looking schemes in my opinion.
Well, this is a play on two sort of different paint schemes, because in a way you kind of see Miami Vice, in a way you obviously see the Rowdy Energy sponsor on it, but you also see, if you take a deeper look, that's Alex Bowman's 2021 paint scheme right now that he runs with Allies, so, and Hendrick Motorsports, so he's kind of got a combo of about three things at once. He's got the Alex Bowman paint scheme, he's got the Rowdy Energy on the car, and of course he has his own custom number. I think that adds on to the style that he's taken on a current paint scheme in the Cup Series. One of the very nice looks that we're seeing over the course of tonight's event. You saw Kyle Benson try a move to the outside. He, in turn, has fallen down to 10th. He's got put right in the sucker hole on the outside where nobody wanted to follow him. And at this point, he is right now mired in the 10th spot. You see him right behind Tyler Warner, who we also mentioned as he was falling back to the pack and did not want to be aggressive up front. So as we're speaking right now, Francisco, a lot of drivers have already put their strategy into place. I think that's what they want here. They want to start logging in laps so they can try to formulate their plan, put it into action. They don't want to see yellows that sort of kind of take things out of whack. They want to keep this thing green, and from then they can start to implement and start to try to find their way to the end of this race and be there to win.
Yeah, and if this race does continue going green flag, at least in the short future, we may see pit stops somewhere in the next 15 laps. They didn't pit too far along ago, but they do have 75% of their fuel tanks filled up. Everybody does here tonight, so that will translate to about a 35 lap run or 30 lap run, if you will. It depends on the exact measurements that iRacing takes for the plate tracks itself, but we could see pit stops somewhere in the next 15 laps if this race continues to go green flag.
And we'll see if that pitch strategy ends up for their favor. A lot of drivers will try to do different things, and if you look back at the race that started this season entirely here at Daytona, strategy was the name of the game. Strategy was the reason Tyler Warner was able to walk away with his first race victory and the victory in the opening race of the season. Strategy with about 15 laps to go. Drivers were cutting it very close to the end of the race, to the checkered flag, and of course we saw how it all played out. We saw a lot of the smaller packs, we saw some of the lap traffic, we saw everything unfold, and that's a big reason as to why that race ended the way it did. Tonight could very well fall in the same category. We haven't seen as much chaos. We've only seen 2 incidents. Our biggest one was on lap 1, or on lap 2 rather, but hopefully we don't see any more large instances, and we can hopefully keep everybody clean for the most part as Brian M. Smith continues to lead this race. Much work here for about 4th position. Justin Mons not giving up against Scott Healy right now to the outside. He's got help from the driver who started on the pole, Dustin Webb in the 73.
And the key to making the outside work is having momentum and at the same time knowing when to side draft. You have to stay at least alongside one of these cars and pull them back so that you can have a chance to move up and get to the next car, side draft them. You see right there, he lost momentum to Scott Healy, and by pulling in right behind him where he did, that's not exactly going to help the outside or himself. They're just going to go right there and cruise up to the back of the top 2 who had gotten away momentarily. But there goes Scott Healy trying to make a move to the outside of your second place driver, but tucks right back in as he did not have enough momentum to go on by. So this is just a bunch of cat and mouse that we have going on right now. So people are trying to figure out what exactly can they do in order to make a move and when and where they can make it. You see Craig Lautensager all over the back of Brian M. Smith. And one thing that I did notice by driving these cars in a race at Talladega not too long ago is that the rear bumper of this car tends to get very light if somebody's pushing on you, especially as the tires wear. So with this run continuing to go, the rear bumper of everybody's car is going to start getting lighter, and that could increase the chance of a potential spin if somebody pushes you in the wrong place.
We may end up seeing that, and we saw some of the controversy with this car right here. Not Scott Healy, perhaps, or per se, but the Chevrolet Camaros or the pointed noses that has been some of the controversy with the super speedways. I believe that the new movement to the ZL1 1LE body. You see some of that pointed nose as he's going through the 31-degree banking, but it's a lot smoother than what it used to be, but still do see some of those issues from the pointed nose when they're trying to give those bumps. For Scott Healy, though, he's been fairly contact-free. They're getting around the lap car themselves. That is 22nd place. Cody Ivy in the 81. We saw him not too long ago leading the edge of the top 10 in a second line. It seems as though he's fallen back, and he's put one lap down. Him and Ricky Rosner have fallen in the same fate, so their issues have already put them down one lap, and hopefully they're looking for a yellow, or at least Cody Ivy is hoping that he can stay ahead of Rosner, get a lucky dog if we go under the caution flag. But as of right now, there seems to be some movement around the top 7. Tyler Werner, you figure he may have a plan with Kyle Benson in the 75, but as soon as that goes down, caution waves. See one of the slower cars that may have been, that is the 88 of Brandon T. Banks. Eric Schaffer slowed on the track as well, so I think he may have been a cause of this incident. You see the damage to the rear end of his Camaro. Brandon T. Banks looking similarly with that damage. We'll try to take a look at the replay, see exactly where this began. Might have been a 3-car incident down the back straightaway, Francisco, which is a simple case of getting turned, I believe, right here.
Yeah, it was, I saw smoke when we were changing cameras. I just thought it was somebody who had blinked out, but you see, he was pushing. We were just talking about this, Kenneth. You try to push the car in front of you, and it just gets so light, and into the outside wall he goes, and then after coming off the wall, he turns back down the racetrack and spins Schaffer there. Probably lost control after hitting the wall. You see right there, just hard into the wall. And then somebody comes in, and I believe that's Roman Long. I'm not entirely sure. They came in flying and hit the 22 in the back end, so very troubling there as the 22 gets sent into the outside wall. It doesn't look like there's much damage, but he does have a little bit of front end damage, and that's not going to hurt his race cars. It was actually Eric Stewart who got into him.
Yeah, big hit by the 99 of Eric Stewart. Hopefully there's no engine damage to his car, but as we're seeing, he's probably going to go down pit road, burn his first fast repair of the evening. But this won't be the first time the leaders go down pit road. Brian Smith has a good amount of distance to second place Craig Lonsarger. They're going to be hard on the brakes, go down to pit road, and everybody going to look for potentially 4 tires and fuel. But I think fuel will be the biggest concern here. Tires don't necessarily mean that much here at the super speedways, so we'll see who gets the fastest time out of the wall. See a couple jacks lifting some of the cars on the track, including current race leader Smith. We'll see who comes out first. Once they head out, I believe it'll be Scott Haley in the 64.
Probably difference on the amount of fuel you're taking, and that is crucial seconds, and Scott Haley will take the lead from Brian M. Smith off pit road as you see a couple cars going around and take the wave around there. So Scott Haley, who's been up front in the last couple of races, gotten 2 wins this season at Dover and most recently at Phoenix, trying to see if he can capture a 3rd win on the season here at Daytona.
We talk about some of his 2 wins earlier, one at Dover in a fuel strategy race, and then obviously last Wednesday at Phoenix where he dominated. We mentioned at the top of the show he led 150 laps of the 200 laps there at Phoenix. Was able to walk away with, frankly, a dominating win. He's going to be back up to the front when we go back green. 35 laps completed here for the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series at Daytona International Speedway. Scott Healy leads off of pit road. We'll take a moment to step aside, but you won't miss a thing right here on MaxSpeedTV.
We've been waiting for this moment. Generations of innovation all coming together in one place. A pedigree of more than 70 years of NASCAR Cup Series history, from the past to the present, from Petty to Earnhardt to Elliott. Today, there's no more waiting. The future of NASCAR is now. Drive the next-gen cars today on iRacing and step into the next generation of racing.
36 laps in the books right now from the Daytona International Speedway. We are ready to kick off our third restart of tonight's coverage. Kenneth Bueno and Francisco Bacalhau along with you for the action here. The 4-Wide Racing Cup Series, our final regular season race. Race number 18 before we get to Richmond. Scott Healy with a fast pit stop. He puts himself up front alongside Brian M. Smith as a pace car looks for the safety of pit road. We're ready to go back green. Let's listen to the sounds here at Daytona. We'll crank it up on MaxSpeedTV. Scott Healy continues to lead the way. Nicholas Vizzuti right behind him. Dustin Webb, Kyle Benson, and Justin Mons to complete your top 5. You just heard a multitude of the engine sounds from the in-car cameras within these iRacing virtual NASCAR Cup Series race cars. And here's some of them laying off the throttle, of course, staying within this draft. A lot of them so far single file. But if you did notice one thing, though, it was that the 78 of Brian M. Smith, he had a moment to go to the rear of the field. It seems like he stayed outside, got shuffled out, decided to lay it all the way back. Now he's got a nice sub from the 5 of Joey Sagrifed to try to put himself back to the front.
And one of the things that we did talk about is if you can get nose to tail, that's a lot of momentum that you can carry. It's very difficult to handle, but if you can make it work, you will gain so much speed. And you saw the momentum they had. As soon as they caught up and they got separated just a little bit, it sort of equaled out. And now they're sort of stalled out on this outside lane. It is just M2, and around goes Brian M. Smith.
Brian M. Smith around. He got tagged by Joey Sagriped. He brings out a caution. And close enough goes Brandon Gillis. I think a couple more drivers may have had contact. But Brian M.
Incredible.
Smith had a ride through the banking. And the caution waves once more. We'll try to take a replay, but you saw it right at the head of your screen in the forefront of the action. That was in tandem with Jovi Sagriped. Sagriped gets into him, and around he goes.
How did he not hit the wall there? I am impressed by what a save the 78 has done here, Kenneth. I mean, it's not often that you get spun just like this, and with the way it hit the apron and was going up the racetrack. I mean, that is underrated right there, the fact that he kept that off the wall.
And you can see it there as he's spinning around. You'll see him go back up the banking. His car, you see his wheels. He's pretty much full throttle at that point, trying to keep it off of the wall. Make sure that he doesn't get any more contact from the damage that he's already accrued. And he goes around there, take on board, or an onboard look with the 9 of Brandon Gillis. Watch this as he goes through the banking.
Blinded by the smoke, you just see it right in front of you. What a good avoidance there. Just kind of have to hold it straight. It will work itself out, and it did. And once again, the 78 was able to keep it straight. Not much damage on his race car. You see the left front there was sprinkled a little bit. We're right on board with him to see just how it was from him. You see right there from the bumper. Around he goes and just staring at the wall, keeping it off with the rear end. And left front's crinkled up a little bit, but I think he could keep going and save that fast repair for later in this race, Kenneth. That damage does not look like it'll hurt him too bad. At least he'll be able to draft.
I believe drivers may have stepped or are about to step on pit road. I think unfortunately for Brian M. Smith, he has decided to quit this race, so he will be out, unfortunately, with the damage. I don't believe he even tried to go for a fast repair. He does not show up on our telemetry, so very unfortunate end to Brian M. Smith's night. But we've seen him be so successful. We saw the same thing happen at the Charlotte Roval, where he was running up front for the lead, got into a couple mistakes, hit the wall, and then decided to call it quits after that. So I guess Brian M. Smith is going to follow that same path, and unfortunately, he won't be there for the rest of this race. Meanwhile, most of these drivers will. There goes Scott Healy. He'll be first out of pit road. Going to be another driver to take just gas. Dustin Webb, Craig Launsauger, Kyle Benson, Nicholas Zuzzi, a handful of others also went for the same strategy. So for the recent yellow that we had, our recent restart, couple laps later, we have that caution. Not many drivers want to take too much tires. They want to be there with fuel as concerned. So we're about to be there, the halfway mark of this race. Says Cody Kinsey will be staying out this time by.
And they pitted about 10 laps ago, just before that restart that we had not too many laps ago, Kenneth. So most likely a strategy call by Kinsey, hoping that they go long enough after this green flag run to just give himself that track position, and they all come down once more. There's still at least, I think, 2 pit stops everyone's got to make before the end of the race here tonight. So there's still a ways to go as far as pit road and how many minimal times you have to come down. But I think this 93 is already intending on trying to set a trend as far as strategy and what these drivers are going to try and do, get the track position. You saw that it's a little bit harder to move your way up through the field now with the newer aerodynamics of the plate package. The easiest way to do so is when you're all side by side and just jump into a different line. But if it's single file, you're going to have a hard time going up there because the outside has trouble get going.
And we'll see this over the course of tonight, especially as we're getting to the halfway mark of this race, because the fuel strategy and the fuel length will be important as we move forward. We haven't had at least long green flag stretch, Francisco, for the drivers to be tested for green flag pit stops, but we could very well be in the position to get there because there's still so much time left in this race that we don't know whether we'll end up seeing a long green flag run either play out or if we continue to see the trend that we've seen so far tonight where we run a couple of laps, standard green, and then a quick yellow will keep us under control, and then we'll go back for a restart, which we will do very, very soon with Cody Kinsey at the head of the field. This will be yet again another lead change under pit stops, and we've seen some of them happen under green, but under pit stops we saw Jovi Sagriped do it as he missed his pit stall. Now second time around we see it with the 93 of Cody Kinsey. We'll run through the top 10. It'll be Kinsey, Scott Healy on the outside of row number 1. Dustin Webb will be 3rd. Craig Launsauger to 4th. Kyle Benson to the top 5 with Nicholas Vizzuti, Christopher Bishop, Tyler Murray, Brandon Gillis, and Justin Mons. Final driver in your current top 10. We so far have 21 cars on the lead lap. Jovi Sagriped is going to be the first with Brian M. Smith 2 laps down. He is out of this race. We currently sit with about 22 cars currently running on the racetrack or being still active at the moment. Cody Kinsey ready to lead us back to the green flag, so we'll step out of the 31-degree banking, go straight for the tri-oval. This will be yet again another restart. We've seen with the past couple of restarts, we've seen the outside lane be contentious with the bottom. Does this change with Cody Kinsey at the head of the field? Pace car will move to the safety of pit road. Already getting to get things started at lap 46 of 100, close to the halfway mark with Cody Kinsey leading the way.
A solid start for Cody Kinsey. We saw third place struggle to get going. That allowed Craig Longensonger to dive in there and sort of get behind your leader. And look at the outside, just completely dissolved before they even get to turn one. Scott Healy not trying to give up, trying to side draft, but with no help, it's just not going to work to his avail. But he's still trying to make it work here. He's going to pull alongside. Is actually they're wrecking. Upside down goes Kinsley.
Kinsey goes upside down. Healy involved in it as well. There's Ricky Rosner with an extra tap. But we have a gigantic pileup. The biggest crash all night long happens on the back straightaway. There's Scott Healy, his beat up Chevrolet Camaro, now limping back to the front straightaway. And we had both of them making contact. We saw the 64 trying to side draft. And ultimately, it did not pan out the way the 64 anticipated. Take a look as they're heading through turns 1 and 2 rather, to the back straightaway. And it starts right about there. Him and Kinsey make contact. And I believe it may have been a push initially from the 13, but it kind of looks tough from this angle here. We'll try to see from the aerial shot. We'll see whether this was indeed a bump from the 13 and or a push from the 64. Yep. And it was actually a hit between the 13 and the 64 as Healy was trying to side draft the race leader. They get into each other. They go back up the wall. The 93 of Kinsey goes for a wild ride. The 75 of Vazuzzi gets in it. Justin Mons with a nice job to avoid. Look at the hit by Pete Bruni. And he gets in a Cody Ivey as well down low. Ultimately, the biggest crash we've seen so far here tonight. Probably not at the moment we were expecting, but this is not good for a lot of the competitors.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for the top two that Healy was really making that side draft work. He had to do that, considering he had nobody behind him. Vazuzzi was starting to get a run, but everybody was down on that inside lane, and it was just very difficult. Let's look on the onboard of Kyle Benson or that 73 behind just to see the look that they had as they see this unfolding in front of them. It was a wild ride for that 93 of Cody Kinsey.
You look on board with the 4 of Kyle Benson, sees the smoke, goes for the slowdown. Oh, just able to skate away down low, along with Craig Lonsager, Dustin Webb. I think one of the biggest looks will be from the 9 of Brandon Gillis. He had a front row seat of what happened, and he was able to slip by with Justin Mons. Both of them able to go through the high side where the trouble was at its peak. You see them go right for the outside wall. Thread the needle, they call it.
Ooh, man. Just... You go where they are because they won't be there that much longer, and that's exactly what he did. And he started spinning down the racetrack, and that left the middle lane open for him to go right on by. So Gillis with a fantastic effort to avoid that wreck, and now he finds himself in second place actually behind Christopher Bishop, as the top two have stayed out on the racetrack.
And the top two did stay out. Everybody went down pit road. That of course includes the drivers involved in this incident. That does include the 64 of Scott Healy. He had that fast repair to his advantage, so he does take it. Then the 93 of Cody Kinsey also has one as well, but he ended up towing down to pit road as his engine did not have enough power to push him there. And he's going to spend a lot more time down there. However, he does indeed have a fast repair to his pocket, so he's able to use it once he gets around the tow sequence and hopefully able to click it in enough time that he doesn't have to sit through all the time that the required repairs will take. I'm assuming it may take a long time considering the strength that he hit that outside wall. And again, we lay under caution here, lap number 48. We'll take a look at our race summary as we progress through tonight with about 52 laps to go. Once they cross the start-finish line, we've had 5 cautions, this being the most recent. We've had 12 caution laps. We'll be counting on that as we move forward. And we've had 5 lead changes so far. A handful of them under green, good amount of them under yellow. This will be counted toward one of the 5 lead changes as the lights go out on the iRacing official pace sedan. So I guess, Francisco, if we've been looking at the intensity of this race, do we see it pick up over the next 50 laps?
I think it's already starting to pick up, Kenneth. We just saw it right there. Scott Healy was trying to side draft as much as he possibly could, and it resulted in a little bit of a crash there with someone who he didn't take into account when trying to side draft for the lead, and that was Craig Lonsonger in third. So I definitely look for something like this to continue happening through the rest of this race, because it has just been shown throughout this evening that being in the lead is going to be important. You're at a disadvantage because people can get runs on you, but if you can get up there and make the right blocks, especially the arrow blocks, then you're going to be in a good position by the very end of this race to try and win it.
And that's the thing, you have to position yourself not just to be there at the end, but to give yourself even a remote shot of winning the entire race. And that's what's the most difficult part about going for these super speedway races, is the fact that you have to keep that in mind. You want to stay alive, but you also want to stay alive enough at the front in order to be in contention for the win. And many times we've seen here at super speedways where leaders get into contact, much like you saw in that recent yellow, but that happens on the last lap and involves the driver either in third or anyone behind to get through, sneak away, capture their race win, even though everybody else in front of them had already decided to bin it for the night. We'll see everybody pile up on this restart. Lap 50 will be the mark that we go back green. Pace car will make its way down. It'll be Christopher Bishop, the 42, the one leading this race. Craig Lonsonger to his outside. We're back under green from Daytona.
A quote that summarizes plate racing, Kenneth, is, "To finish first, you must first finish."
Yes. Easily one of the quotes. I think I heard Jesse Iwuji say that last night in the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series broadcast. That is fairly true, and for right now, these drivers are looking to finish first. Handful of drivers to the outside, bit of contact, a little bit of a wobble out of the 13 of Lonsonger. He had a bit of trouble getting that push from Justin Mons. They seem to be okay. We have a big lineup on the outside. Craig Lonsonger with a nose out front to turn 3.
He got squiggly, but that was a sign that they were starting to get a run. That inside lane had broken up, and they got a big push, and you see them right now side by side for the lead. But that 13, if he wants to keep it, needs to get a little bit closer to that inside lane, especially in the corners. That's what's going to keep them side by side. You got to get that close, and the 41 is trying to push him to see if he can get clear and push that 13 out to the lead. You just see how many less cars are on that outside lane, so they have to do that, in order to keep position. Doesn't quite clear Bishop there on the inside lane, and now Bishop will have an opportunity to gain a little bit of momentum back in the corner, but side by side for the lead in the first 4 rows.
There has only been one instance as to where the outside has made a move for the race lead successfully. Ooh. It was Brian M. Smith earlier tonight, but there has been a wreck behind them. The 20 of Edward Schur gets collected. Handful of drivers search for the inside grass. However, caution does not wave. Now it waves. Race control decides it fit. They continue going back up the track, and a handful of drivers get collected, including the 20 of Edward Schur. Had a moment behind them. Ricky Rosner with significant damage, and multiple drivers involved. We saw it was not going to look good once Craig Lonsonger started to wobble on the back straightaway with a push by Mons. It was unstable from the very beginning. We'll take a look at how this unfolded. You see everybody near the mid-pack. This is where Edward Schur is at the time of the yellow flag. It started up ahead the road, though, with the 13 of Lonsonger, but it actually may have originated right about here. As you see the 73, we'll take a look at the blimp. There is contact between the 41 and the 13, but it was actually the 20 of Schur who got into Dustin Webb. Careens right into the 33 of Tyler Warner. There's the 25 of CJ Munier. And a couple drivers get involved. However, it doesn't seem to be worthy of a yellow. Nobody seems to be around. And I guess at this point, many slow cars on the racetrack, they decide to throw the yellow. That's exactly where it all started at that point.
Yeah, unfortunate for everybody involved there. I mean, you just saw it was stacking up on the outside lane. They were trying to push and make that outside lane work. We're seeing the outside starting to work more and more, and we're seeing the cost of it, but that's what you have to do in order to make that outside lane work. As we see some people coming down pit road, some not coming down pit road and staying out on the racetrack. So this is just going to be the name of the game for the rest of the evening, who decides to come in and when they do. A couple come in, a couple stay out. We'll have to see just how this works out. But I do want to make a quick little update before we continue with the broadcast. It looks as though for the Knicks fans, they're going to get their first playoff win in over 10 years as they're leading 100-92 with just a handful of seconds left in their game against Atlanta.
That's fantastic. I think Stephen A. Smith is probably jumping in his seat right now. He's been waiting for that moment for a long time, let alone a win in the finals, a win in the playoffs, meaning very big for them. And maybe, hopefully, he'll make a video at the end of tonight. We can make it a meme on Instagram. We'll see the Stephen A. Smith burner have it on Twitter in a moment. But at that point, as we look forward, a couple drivers did stay out. As race leader, Christopher Bishop went in. That is the driver you're looking at right now. A little bit of a different paint scheme. I think you can kind of distinguish them fairly well. That's the 8 of Tyler Murray. The Pit Viper colors, actually a very camo look on his race car. Of course, in commemoration of Memorial Day weekend, but he does have a new sponsor, Pit Viper. I don't believe we've seen that on his car thus far in this season. We've seen him hold Hewlett-Packard. We've seen him hold a couple other sponsors. I think, if it can come to mind, there has been a bunch of others. High Life Sports Network, that's also been one of the colors he's carried. I believe that was one of the colors he carried to start this season. And he'll be leading this field only on about 5 laps on his stint. So I don't think he saw it fit to go down pit road. But I'm giving Francisco that this is going to really help with the stress of fuel strategy, because when you're going green for a while, of course, you're going to start thinking about it in a way if you go long enough. But then when cautions start to fly, and then you start to think, okay, I have the shot to go down pit road. I can try to play out my strategy. And even if I don't get tires, I know that I'm going to be good on fuel. And for the most part, I won't waste too much time or track position in the case, because a lot of others try to follow in that same suit. So in many cases, this could alleviate some of that tension that builds up from trying to execute a solid pitch strategy. And right now, as of lap 54, I think everybody seems to be relaxed on that end, as most of everybody is just able to fill up on fuel.
That's the case for most of these drivers, but at the same time, with just under half of this race still remaining, there's still at least one pit stop, I believe, that everybody's got to make before the end of the race. So pit strategy is still going to be involved. When you pit and when the cautions fall will still matter. And whoever makes the right decisions, which we still don't know, because if we knew when the cautions would come out, I'll tell you when to pit, as most crew chiefs, most notably Steve Letarte, will say. But we'll have to see just how the rest of this race continues to play out. And the person will make a choice on whether they come down pit road or not. And at the end of the race, we'll see just where they end up. And that'll determine whether it was the right decision or not. Because right now, it's just impossible to tell.
I like to think that in most cases for, I think, any sim race, not only just the races at the super speedways, that there's just a big list of questions, I think, figuratively. There's a lot of questions, and then over the course of the race, you start to answer them. You start to fill in the answers. You start to find out what's where, how things are faring, what's going to be next, how we're going to anticipate it, and all in all, who may be the winner at the end when we get to the checkered flag. We still haven't answered that question, though. We're still at least less than 50 laps away from it, but we're ready for a release start on lap number 55. Tyler Murray and Craig Lonsugger, your first two to the front row. They're going to go up the gears, and we're back under green at Daytona.
Great start for Tyler Murray. Maybe too good of a start if they get lined up behind him and decide to make a move. This is one of the few racetracks besides Talladega you do not want to get too good of a start. Doesn't look like Benson will make a move, so that'll alleviate him for now. But I'd look out for the rest of this field, because somebody will not stay in line. And
everybody so far staying in line. Not many drivers scooping up high. You see Christopher Bishop. A couple drivers did. The 56 of Michael Newbraw gets into trouble on the back straightaway. Believe he caught Brandon Gillis in it as well. Caution again. Very close goes the 6 car. And the 56 stays stalled in the middle of the back straightaway, trying to whip himself around. He brings out our 6th caution of the evening. I believe it may have been our 7th. Either one. And again, we lay under the rest of the yellow flag. We'll find a way to see where this began. I guess I sort of jinxed it in a way. Said not many drivers were looking up high, but it was indeed Michael Newbraw. Him and Brandon Gillis get into contact here. And you see it just barely as they're coming to the back straightaway. You'll see it better here with this look. Coming to the back straightaway. There's the 56, the 9 of Brandon Gillis behind. Gillis goes for the top. I think Newbraw tried to defend, but it was all too late. Then Gillis gets collected in more contact. A couple other drivers hit him as well. And you'll see it once more there. The 9 goes down the track. A couple other drivers get hit as well. I believe Eric Stewart may have gotten a piece of this. You'll see it again here from the blimp cam. This gives you a better shot of where the field is. There was actually more hits below the racetrack. There's Eric Schaffer, the 81 of Cody Ivey, the 88 of Brandon T. Banks. He's had a rough night already. It has not been fun here on the back straightaway. I think the back straightaway has been the trouble spot here, Francisco. And that's where we've seen a lot of the yellows develop.
Yeah, and, you know, I went to the Daytona 500 earlier this year, and the big one did happen on the back straightaway. Entering turn number 3, we saw Christopher Bell and Eric Almirola make contact, and that ensued a 19-car pileup very early in that race. And much like that, we're seeing a very high quantity of crashes happening on the back straightaway, whether it's off turn 2, whether it's entering turn 3, or even the middle of the back straightaway. We're seeing a lot of incidents going on in this part of the racetrack, and I mean, and it's for a reason. I mean, think about the amount of banking unloading that you're having coming off these corners. You're going from 31 degrees to about 2 degrees on these straightaways, so the car becomes very light, and at the same time, you're trying to make dramatic moves, and you're also trying to predict what other people are trying to do, and that coupled with all of those other variables, you get with this.
Yeah, you do indeed get that, and I think the aggressivity is only going to start to get higher as we move forward, because if you saw that block up high in the final laps of that race, if that's the case, they're probably going to wreck themselves for the win and checkers the wreckers, if you will. And for them too, I think they have significant damage. I'm not sure as to whether Newbra has a fast repair available to him. The answer is no. He had already used it, and I believe he's used it now, so he's right there on the racetrack, sitting on pit road. As for a couple other drivers involved, I believe it was the 9 of Brandon Gillis. He currently sits right now on the racetrack. He also got his fast repair, so he is out and away, and he'll be in the 9th position, same place he started when we went green. So again, under yellow we fall. We've seen many of this happen more recently in these runs. We had some sporadic yellows to start, and then as soon as we creep forward toward the halfway mark, it's been a lot harder to stay under green. Some of these drivers trying to at least pick up the intensity, and the patience starts to lower in that case.
You can say it with me, Kenneth. Cautions breed cautions.
They do. And even closer now, because we're at lap 58. Lights go out on the pace car. Tyler Murray will lead us, but there's still a lot of time left. I think telemetry says we're about 34 minutes out from the end of this race, and that's only if we continue to stay green. That's not even if, that's not incorporating the yellows. That's not incorporating the pit stops. We're going to be, if it stays in a green, if there's no change in the flag until the white flag and the checkered flag come out, then we'll have approximately about 34 minutes until we end this race. So a lot of the yellows have slowed things down for the most part. I think it's given Tyler Murray a lot to think about on the restart. He didn't nail the last one, and that's one of the first instances, Francisco, that we saw the inside line get such a huge jump, and the outside line was not as strong. And maybe Tyler Murray can try to repeat this and hopefully stay out front.
And we'll see just what continues to happen throughout this race, because it's going to be a long one if these cautions continue to come out the way they do, but you never know with the super speedway. Maybe we do go the end of the race and it goes green flag the entire way, which if it does, that might be green flag pit stops we'll see before the end of the race, because they are still unable to go the rest of the way on just a single tank of fuel. So a lot of variables still up for debate, Kenneth, and we'll still have to see just how these closing laps continue to wind down before we make a final guess, a final assumption as to just how this could end.
Well, we're going to restart lap 59. It'll be Tyler Murray, Kyle Benson, Nicholas Vizzuti, Scott Healy, Justin Mons, Edward Scher, Dustin Webb, Craig Lautensager, and it also stands with the 16 of Matt Roberts and 9th Eric Schaffer, your final driver to the top 10. Pace car, again, going to look left. It'll be Tyler Murray and Kyle Benson. 2 drivers up front will lead us back to green. Another solid start by the driver up in front. The question is, how long will it take before everyone starts to swallow him in? He's going to defend high to go back to turn 1. Everybody clear, though, as they head back to the banking.
Kind of strung out through the front of the field, but look at Nicholas Vizzuti getting right to his rear bumper as they enter 1 and 2. Scott Healy not too far behind. They're very nip and tuck there in the top 3 positions. Vizzuti staying in line, and so is the rest of the field. Kyle Benson falling way back. He's losing a lot of ground. I'm not sure if that's not by design, but he is losing ground, and he's going to fall outside the top 10 as they go into turn 3.
It's just a product of staying up there and nobody going with you. He's going to have to find some sort of space down low. Almost had it between the 16 and the 22, but indeed he's going to stay up high on the racetrack. Going up high goes Nicholas Vizzuti. He thought better of it. Goes sneak back down to the double yellow line. He's going to stay behind your race leader and plot this move. But now here comes a big question I think that we've yet to mention over the course of tonight's broadcast, Francisco, is the fact that you're having drivers around you, and a lot of super speedway racing relies on cooperation. You're going to have drivers work with you in the draft. You're going to have drivers not want to work with you. We saw it earlier with Justin Mons and Dustin Webb in the midst of the pack, where they put Justin Mons in the middle of the sucker hole. Now, over the course of at least 60 laps or so, with about 40 to go, you've probably already acquainted yourself with A, the drivers you're racing against, and B, their style in super speedways, so you can try to find people to work with. We've seen teammates do so. They're in team communications. They know what to do, or whether things go ahead. But we also see it happen in every other scenario. You saw it right there. Nicholas Vizzuti had a shove from Scott Healy. It dissipated quickly. Now he'll get picked up by the fellow Ford Mustang and Justin Mons. But if you're going to win this race, Francisco, if you're going to make any moves, anybody to help is going to be critical.
And he tried to side draft there. The only problem was Healy was able to get back to the 8 and give him a push and clear the 8 back to the lead. So Vizzuti, if he wants to have a shot, he needs to go down to that inside lane and get right on their doors and slow them down in order to give himself an opportunity. But the top 2 on that goes to bumper, and they're trying to push away, but that's unable to quite work in their favor. You see Mons was able to get back in line later. And look who's in the top 3 right now. Edward Scherner, who had those problems and was involved in one of the wrecks not too long ago, he's found himself into the top 3.
And that was him and Tyler Murray involved in one of the first incidents of tonight's race. And now they're back in the top 3. So good to see that number 20 machine back in contention. He did burn off that fast repair, so that's why you're seeing the clean car from the 20 running up front. That's because he already burned it off when he had some damage earlier tonight. And now he's got a shot to push himself to the front. Here's a plan for Scott Healy. No help up top, but he is going to try and side draft his way through a big bump by the Chevy Camaro behind Tyler Murray. They're going to step back to turn 3. Murray still in control.
Healy thought about the side draft for a second, but then remembered that one incident on the restart and probably thought better of it, knowing that there's still 39 laps and now 38 laps when they get back to the line left in this race, and that there's still probably enough time to try that later on, and now's not the time to see just how much ground he is losing and continues to lose as he tries to find a place in line, and will do so around that 9th spot. A little bit of a wiggle, trying to squeeze in a little bit of a gap, but he does get in there. Now the rest of the field is single file.
I'm glad I wasn't the only one seeing that, because he got a big shove by Eric Schaffer, and his car just wobbled left and right. I think similar to what we saw with Ryan Blaney at Talladega last season, but at this moment, Scott Healy maintains himself straight. Now here comes another tandem up top. Seems as though Justin Mons and Vizzuti have decided to trade places. They're now trying to work together up top, and it seems as though the success has not been there, but I think they're trying at the most part with less than 40 to go.
They're trying, and they have a lot of initial momentum, but they're struggling to keep it up on that outside, and they're going to have to actually get lined up nose to bumper and actually give each other forward momentum and side draft the cars on the inside. If you don't do that, then there's no point in being outside, because with this new package, it just won't work the same way it used to. And I think that's what these drivers are trying to learn here tonight. It's just what is the minimum they have to do, because I don't think they want to push. I don't think they want to have to get close in side draft, because it can be proven to be very difficult and very reckless if they do so. So I think they're trying to find different ways to do exactly what they were able to, except they're finding it very difficult to do so, and they're going to have to adapt to the new way of doing it, and they're going to have to learn before the end of the race.
That's just sticking right back to the plan, right? Going back to just logging laps in the field and just staying there, staying under green, letting the yellows fall if it happens behind you, but don't push the issue. Stay where you are right now and keep yourself comfortable. That's what the 13 in the Raglan Slugger is in right now. The Iowa winner from earlier this season. He has been fairly consistent. He's going to be one of the 10 playoff drivers when the checkered flag waves tonight and when we go to Richmond next Wednesday. But for the driver of the 13, he's right here in third. He's in prime position if he desires to make a move. He's got some drivers to help him if willing, and he can be able to do something potentially take a position away. However, he's staying on his own accord to keep himself within the top 3, keep himself where he's running, and not going to risk the potential of getting pushed in the sucker hole and potentially losing all that track position, because if there's any place you want to be near the end of this race, you want to be here, at least within the first 3 or 4, maybe 5 positions, because you're right in the draft, you're right in this pack, and if anything happens between the top competitors, if they get any sort of contact, you can be able to take advantage. There was contact right there between the top 5 as they about go 3 wide. The 41er Justin Mons had to split the middle with Vizzuti to help. That really strung them out from the top 4, and Healy almost had a moment there as they go side by side.
And this is going to hurt them. If they're side by side, no one's going to be able to really close a gap to your race leaders. So they got to figure this out quickly. And I think Scott Healy's about to get cleared of this group, so they'll be able to run down the lead group once again and not lose touch. So a bit of a moment there on the back straight when we saw him go 3 wide, but they were able to keep it pointed in the right direction. And now they're finding themselves back to this group.
So now they're back single file. I think a little bit of a moment there as they're coming off of turn 2. That's something that we've seen so far here tonight, where a lot of the cases, they drift up the track off the banking, and then the driver tries to look low. They keep their line tucked, and then they potentially make contact as the lines just differ as they move forward. So a lot of drivers now still single file on the top 7 or so. There's a 16 of Matt Roberts. He started deep in this field, so good to see him back in contention. And now there's only about 12 or so drivers here in this pack, Francisco. Eric Stewart and Dustin Webb are the final ones contending for a position here. And it seems as though nobody behind. This is Brandon Gillis all the way on the tri-oval now with the 33 of Tyler Warner, then Brandon Banks behind them. Lots of drivers all by themselves. There's Christopher Bishop with significant damage to his front end. And now I guess separation is the name of the game so far.
Yeah, and Bishop's going to get lapped soon. I mean, we saw there when you changed the camera, he was basically just entering turn 3 when they were exiting turn 2. And you see there, off the rear bumper, he doesn't quite see them, but he's going to start seeing them in his mirror in about a lap or so with the damage that he has on his race car. You see going just about 174 miles an hour by himself with that nose damage, and the pack is going well over 190. You just saw him there going to frame at the entrance of the tri-oval. There's your leader doing 193 going into turn number 3. So they're going at least almost 20 miles an hour faster. They're going to get to him in the next couple of laps. So if a caution doesn't come out, that's going to put Christopher Bishop a lap down.
And that's going to put him in a hole here. He came into this race, again, 24 points ahead of the playoff cutoff. And remember, if another driver ends up winning this race that is not a part of the playoffs, that does include the 20 of Edward Schur, then at that point, Christopher Bishop just gets whacked out of the playoffs, and then he won't have contention for the title in a couple weeks' time. So that's going to be the big risk here by the 42 Bishop, is that he has to hope and pray that nobody ends up winning, or at least nobody new, if they're not locked into the playoffs already. Because let's say if Tyler Warner is able to walk away with the win of this race, it won't matter at all because he's already locked in via points, and he'll just lock himself in with a win even further to Richmond next week. So Christopher Bishop won't have too much to worry about. But if Edward Schur comes away with a win, or if anybody else even in this group comes away with a win, if Justin Mons, Matt Roberts, Eric Schaffer, if anyone else behind them goes for the checkered flag at the end of it all, that's going to mean a very detrimental position for the driver of that 42. And things are getting very dicey behind here up at the front of the pack. Edward Schur giving the shove to Tyler Murray, and it seems to wobble the 8 machine. It's getting his car very upset on the racetrack.
They worked their way off turn 4. We're coming to 30 laps to go. So this race is starting to come down to its late stages. We're starting to set up what the appearance of the race will be for the final couple of laps. And you want to get yourself into position now. You're not going to win the race on this lap, but you can sort of get yourself into a position to where you can possibly win the race on just the final lap. And that's all you need. You don't need to be first. You don't need to be second. You just need to be in the right spot for that final lap. And we don't know what the right spot is, but we'll know once we get there.
Well, the right spot will also be pit road as they start to come down, because if we stay green, then we'll look for them, and then they at least have to pit one more time before this race is said and done. And if we do stay green, that will change the whole dynamic of this race. I don't believe we're going to cut it as close as to about 15-10 to go like we did in the season opener, but if we stay green, we're going to cut it to about maybe 25 laps or so, and I believe by then these drivers can stay out to the end and especially with the fuel that they've already accrued over tonight's coverage with many of the yellows around halfway, that also helps their case, and it probably will make things a little bit easier, and they'll be able to make it to the end. Won't have to worry about fuel, just gonna have to worry about their track position. And speaking of track position, right now 9 cars sit in this main pack. So as we were watching Eric Stewart, Dustin Webb, and CJ Monier battle for position, this trifecta of cars has moved back to turn 3. They're in a pack of their own as they end up behind the main fray in the top 9. So if you're getting separated here, Francisco, even for the pit strategy, does that pose a very big risk when you're losing the draft and you only have about 3 cars to help you?
That is very dangerous. You do not want to lose the lead draft at any cost when you have to consider green flag pit stops. When racing at a plate track, you want to pit with friends, but you definitely want to pit with the lead draft, because if you're able to be first on the pit road in that lead draft and have car count on your side, perhaps that group of yours that pitted will be the only group battling for the lead, and you want to be a part of that group so that you can battle for the lead. Of course, that all comes with communication, who you're talking to in the race, or potentially through a voice channel on Discord. You have to be doing these things consistently as you get close to green flag pit stops. Coordinate it with whoever you're trying to work with in order to give everybody that's in that group a shot, but most importantly, it helps yourself. So you have to be a little bit selfless in order to be selfish at the very end. But that's what it comes down to with these plate races. You don't have spotters to communicate it for you, so you have to do it yourself. And I've gotten a bit of an experience with that, and it's worked out well. And it took a lot of communicating, but once it works out, and it definitely does you a good job.
And that's a fantastic point there, Francisco, because we saw the same thing happen in the season opener here at Daytona for this very series. The fact that some drivers got mired back in traffic and lost out on the pit strategy because they could not find drivers to help them, or they went down pit road, either somebody got a speeding penalty, or they just get separated naturally off pit road, depending on where their pit boxes lay. Then at that point, it creates this huge gap between drivers, and then at that point, you're just basically running laps by yourself, and that is significantly slower than if you were finding, let's say, in a 2-car, 3-car, 4-car, 5-car pack, even more car pack, and you're going to be running overall a lot slower, and you have a potential chance of getting put 1 lap down, which I think nobody wants to deal with, especially at this stage of the race. There's only about 25 laps to go until we call this race official for 100 laps here before the playoffs begin at Richmond next week. So now you're going to have to start to make the moves. You're going to have to start to execute. You have to start thinking about who you're going to be with, who you're going to go in with, who you're going to get out with as well.
The best way I could explain it is that in that race that I was referring to, it was with the NASCAR Xfinity Series machines, and it was about a 9 or 10 car lead draft, and I was communicating with about half of them, and we all coordinated to come down pit road together, and we all came in, had no issues, nobody sped, nobody had any penalties, and we all decided we were going to take the exact same fuel and tire settings, and we exited pit road together. Nobody really had to wait significantly for one another, and we eventually took over the top 5 positions in that race, and it was due to the communications that we had in organizing how we were going to come into pit road versus the lack of communication the rest of the group had trying to pit, and also potential penalties they had in their own pit stops. So, and I only mention this because that's going to play out right here in the next 5 to 10 laps for these very drivers. Who's going to communicate with the others in order to give themselves a shot? Because you need numbers, but you need communication. Make it work the most efficient, so you don't have to wait up on anybody, and so you don't have to spend the most amount of time by yourself. Those who pit in a group and come out as a group will have the best shot at winning this race.
I think if there's anything that we've learned, Francisco, over the course of tonight's coverage, is the fact that we've seen 2 drivers in case work together in drafts. Whenever they moved up the track, the other one followed. This is the duo right here. Red Bull Machine, 75 and Nicholas Rizzuti, and the driver right behind him, the 41 of Justin Mons. These two have been fairly close when working together on track. And I figure that when we go down pit road, or if we do go down pit road within the next coming laps under a green flag strategy, these two will be ones to watch for, because if everybody up ahead, they start to separate, they start to find their own sort of sequences, these two know where to go, these two know who to be with, and they know where to make their plan out for the rest of this race when they pit. And now we've already come to the threshold of about 20 laps to go, so if these guys do end up pitting from now or even a couple laps later under green flag cycles, they will be good to the end of this race. So there will be no stress as to fuel concerns and to whether anybody can save enough to the end. I figure that's going to be even bigger for the driver of the 8 right now leading this pack, Francisco, because he's undoubtedly wasting the most fuel out of everybody in this race. And there they go. Main pack goes in. A big hit, though, by Matt Roberts, who got into Scott Healy. I don't believe Healy has much damage, but everybody hard on the brakes to pit road. A fantastic power move by the 75 of Bazzuti to go third in.
And we saw one of those cars that did stay out, that ran into the back of Healy, lose their front clip. So I don't think anybody came off wrecking in that incident, but that was a close call, and that goes to show how important getting on and off pit road is, and just how much you have to be aware of who's pitting and who's not. There you see, actually, the front clip was not lost. For a moment there, it looked like there was no front clip on one of those two cars, but they were able to go out. And there you see the top 3 coming out 3 wide, and they're able to settle that out. Craig Lautensanger comes out leading the field. Tyler Murray will be in that 2nd position. Sky Healy 3rd, and it looks as though the rest of the field will follow suit. And they're gonna struggle to exit pit road here, trying to keep it under this yellow line.
And now this will be good for them, because if they can catch up to speed, get themselves within draft, this will be fantastic. As you see already, Lautensager, Murray, and Scott Healy, they're already racing their way in. Edward Schur also putting himself in the forefront of the conversation. They can put themselves in this draft now coming out of pit road. As they go naturally 3 wide through turn 3, but at this point, you're going to be seeing them try to form themselves together in a big pack. There's Cody Ivey probably to join the fray as well. That's going to make them a lot faster than the drivers who are now going down pit road. There's CJ Munier, who's staying out. Dustin Webbs and Matt Roberts, they both take their hand at going down pit road. Roberts going to take his faster pair for tonight's race. Eric Schaffer also going to be out as well. CJ Munier, the solo car out on the racetrack right now. He's the only one yet to pit on a 23-lap stint.
And now he's going to reach 20 laps to go in the race. And you see right there, he's with Brandon T. Banks. Brandon T. Banks not on the lead lap in this one, but he is helping that 25 not run by himself necessarily. He at least has a little bit of a speed boost. But if we look back to the main group that did come out of pit road, Tyler Murray is still leading that main group for when this cycles out as the net race lead. Scott Healy is a little bit further back there. There you see the group right now. Edward Scherner is down in 3rd. Craig Lautensanger is there. Cody Ivey is multiple laps down, so he's not in this group. But this top 4 has broken away from the rest of the group that had pitted with them. It is up to them to chase them down, and we'll have to see if they're able to do so. I believe the car leading that group is Nicholas Bazzuti.
That's going to mean big, though, here if you're the driver of the 81, because for Murray, for Healy, for Schur, for all these guys in the lead pack, if anyone else tries to catch up, they have a buffer right there. The 81 of Cody Ivey is going to be that buffer. He's already multiple laps down tonight, as you previously mentioned. He's specifically just 2 laps down. He's the last car running on the racetrack right now in 17th position. But the driver of that 81 machine, he can serve as a potential move to the end of this race for anybody else who wants it, if they want to take away that spot and have to get to the top 4. The real question, though, is going to rely here with CJ Munier. He has yet to pit. He's been about 25 laps on his stint now. He has made no signal to go down pit road just yet. He's working with another lap car here, Francisco. That's the 88 of Brandon T. Banks, the winner at Michigan earlier this season, and one of the drivers that's going to be a part of the playoffs next week. So does this become a potential stretch for the driver of the 25?
No, he doesn't have enough fuel to go to the end. He'd have to go close to 45 laps, and even on 100% fuel, you can't go 45 laps with this play package anymore, Kenneth. So this 25 is going to have to come down pit road sometime, and then the next 5-10 laps top. So he's just staying out right now, trying to lead laps, hoping for a caution, but he's definitely not going to go to the end of the race on that fuel that he has right now.
And right now, we'll see if he's able to stretch it, but gap has now closed in to less than 10 seconds as they cross the stripe with about 18 laps to go from the Daytona International Speedway. Tyler Murray still with the control. He burned his faster pair, so I think he's been smart enough to save it to the end, make his car the cleanest. Leading out front, Scott Healy, Edward Schur, Craig Lautensager, Cody Ivey, the group of 5 that continue to work around the track. There's Christopher Bishop. He's getting lapped once more. He decided to also burn his fast pair before the night is said and done. His car seems to be rather clean. And now it relies on these next 17 laps. How does this fare? Who makes the move? When do they make the move? And do we have a caution before this race concludes?
And we'll have to see if that second group does end up catching them. There you see them further back there. Vizuzzi is there. It's a 4-car group, and they're kind of up to speed. They've been able to maintain and slowly inch their way towards that lead draft. Remember, they do have a sniff of the draft from that group ahead of them, and that perhaps may be helping them just a touch with keeping up and or catching them. So Kyle Benson is going to try and push this 75 up there. There you see Justin Mons is also with this group. You already mentioned previously they're working together, both Vizuzzi and Mons, and they have Benson there to assist them as well to try and catch this main group. They don't have much time to do so, but if they're going to do it, now's the time.
And they've got that pack of 4, so although there's a pack of 5 up ahead, this group can potentially put themselves as a prowess. 3 Ford Mustangs all together, 75-4-41. Now coming to 15 laps to go from Daytona, so we could see them come into the picture. They're about 2 seconds behind the drivers, and they are indeed running faster times right now. That last time by, Kyle Benson ran a 45.956. He's not the leader of this group. But actually, no, that's the fastest time they've ran in the entire race. But for Nicholas Vizuzzi, he ran a 46.5, whereas the leaders ran a 46.4. We're getting very close between these guys right now in the midst of the draft. And the draft certainly is helping, especially if they can catch Cody Ivey, who's now far, or at least starting to tail through.
They were about 2.5 seconds off the lead, almost 2.7 seconds off the lead not too many laps ago. And as they cross the line now, it's about 2.5 seconds still, but they had closed in, generally speaking, on that last lap. So if they get racy up here, or if lap traffic gets in the way, or anything happens to this lead group, that second group can catch them. And remember, they still have that, if they can get close enough, they'll have the draft off them, and that's when they'll really start to close in. So right now, it's not much of an effect, whatever draft they do have, but the second they get into it, they'll really start to make gains, and that's where the tough part is. You have to grind to reach that draft pocket that exists about 1.5 seconds behind the lead, and once you're in there, you're just going to find yourself getting pulled towards them.
One of the biggest super speedway quotes that I've heard is strength in numbers. That's something that really helps here at Daytona, Talladega, any super speedway you're going to go to. That's going to be one of the keys. If you're going to have more drivers in your pack, you're ultimately going to be faster on the racetrack as a result. This is probably going to allow for 7 cars potentially to be in this group. You see further behind them, that's the 9 of Brandon Gillis. Make no mistake, these guys, him and Tyler Warner, are both 1 lap down or more on the racetrack. They don't have a chance to win at the moment, but they just got lapped, they just got passed by the main pack, and they have a chance to catch in the draft if, let's say, these guys start to check up. You see the 9, he's already closing on the 81, so that's going to add a 6th car to the pack, although he's not a driver contending right now in the top 5, and then you'll have the 33 of Tyler Warner if he's able to catch up. I think he's lost the draft significantly, so I'm not sure whether he's going to be a part of this as well, but he could join the pack right here, extend this number to 5, and potentially give them an even better shot to catch up to the guys up front.
And they were catching them not too many laps ago, but now they're actually starting to lose ground to that lead draft, and I'm not exactly sure what could be the 100% exact reason. I know a couple cars have attached themselves to that lead draft, but they're generally even. They're sort of single file. They're not getting really too racy back here, so maybe they're just working out the speed better up front with the cars that they have there, and these guys are just struggling to sort of make it work within themselves, and that's what's allowing this lead draft to sort of get away. They pulled away about 3/4 of a second in just the last 4 laps or so, just after the gains have been being made by that second group. So it's starting to look a little bleak for that second group, and it's going to come down to these 4 cars up front.
That's going to be the problem here, is the amount of time that's left. With 12 laps to go, and they continue to click down as the leaders cross the start-finish line each and every time here at Daytona. These guys, if they're not able to crunch in that gap, they're going to have to hope for a yellow flag. They're going to have to hope that something happens on the track, that hopefully they're not a part of that caution, but hopefully that something does happen on the track to throw a yellow flag, to bunch the field back together, and then ultimately give them a shot to win this race, or to catch up and have a shot even to get into the top 3 positions. As you see the leaders getting around, CJ Munier and Brandon Banks. Again, CJ Munier was the driver who stayed out. He ended up going down pit road. That's what allowed Tyler Murray to come back to the race lead. But at that point, you're going to be hoping that something can bunch the field up, something can bring everyone back together, and then you can have that chance to pounce. But with only 11 laps to go, time is running out, especially if they stay single file.
Yeah, and right now, if you are in this front group, you want to stay single file. You do not want a caution to come out and invite everybody else in this race into this battle for the win. If you're one of these 4 cars, you're hoping it stays like this until the white flag. You want to settle it amongst each other, knowing that as long as you don't wreck, most likely the worst finish you get is 4th.
That's exactly the coincidence right there. And seeing the lap cars behind, that gives you extra solace, because even if you lose some position, if something happens, you have those lap cars to fall back on you. And even if anybody else comes up to bring the fight, you have those two to kind of give that separation, and then the drivers behind are forced to use the outside, and that's not a very nice place to go. We haven't seen many moves happen up atop the banking, but if we're going to look on moves, Francisco, I think you're going to have to look at this top 4 as the pillar for this race with 10 laps to go, because Tyler Murray is, of course, leading this group, yes, but these guys behind him, Scott Healy, Edward Schur, Craig Launsarger, they want the win. They don't want to tuck in behind the race leader. A good amount of them are locked into the playoffs, sure, but to grab this extra win would mean so much. Of course, it would add to the win column, but it would also give them a lot of momentum going to the short track at Richmond next week. So now we focus with 9 laps to go, whether these guys can make any sort of moves and make something happen to pass Tyler Murray.
And they're going to have to do this organized. You won't be able to do it on your own. And the person I'll be looking at in this one will be Edward Schurner. We know that he doesn't have a win, and a win would put him in these playoffs. He's the only one in this top 4 that hasn't won this season. So if he's able to do something and get himself into the playoffs, it would be very clutch of him. But he's got to work with these guys around him and try to see where can he exploit a hole.
And it's hard to find a hole with this super speedway model. You can side draft at best, but you need a lot of that help to even stay committed next to the driver that's leading the field. And we've seen it happen before. We've seen it be successful. We've seen it be unsuccessful. With the help and without the help, a lot of the numbers, a lot of the drivers being in a group has helped make passes up top. The problem is there's only 5 to 6 cars in this group, and all of them are separated from everyone else with 8 laps to go. So now, with the attrition that we've seen tonight, with the separation we've seen tonight, with the green flag pit stops we've seen already executed, that makes things a lot harder in turn to even try to make a move. If the 20 of Edward Schur would try to do something, he would need help from Craig Launsarger, yes, but he would also probably need help from the 81 of Cody Ivey and the 9 of Brandon Gillis to make something work and have a convincing pass for the lead. Because if these two go up high, the 2 down low, the 8 and the 64 stay there, then they're probably going to stall each other out, and we may have a photo finish to the end of this race, which is not what Edward Schur wants. He wants to have a clear victory to the end of this one. He doesn't want to have to deal with the extra hard pumping action that comes with the photo finish. For us, it'll be fantastic, but for him, it's gonna be bad.
Yeah, as a driver, you want to make sure you have it, and as a broadcaster, you want that to see that close action. So we can't have it both ways, but if you're the driver of this 20, you want them to get side by side in front of you, and you get a big enough front to pass both of them. We saw Justin Haley do this in the Xfinity Series not too many years ago, but that win got taken away from him because he went below the yellow line. No yellow line rule here on iRacing. It'll be an admin decision whether the driver goes below there. But if the top 2 get side by side and the 20 has the opportunity to go somewhere on the racetrack, whether it's the inside of those 2 or the outside of those 2, he'll definitely go there and at least make an attempt to try and go for the win. And he won't just sit back and take that 3rd place.
I'm seeing the 13 lag a little bit from the top 3. I'm not sure whether he's slowly losing the draft or if he's just trying to build up a substantial run in the back straightaway, make a push happen. He's already starting to come up to the back bumper, and now there's a lot more lap traffic here up in front of your leaders. Tyler Murray has a lot to look forward to in his windshield because he sees there's Eric Stewart, Dustin Webb, and Eric Schaffer. 3 drivers who are now at risk of being 1 lap down in the midst of the pack, but they could probably add on to this line of cars. We'll see if Murray's able to get around them or if he even decides to get around him. At this moment, he decides now is the time. He's going to go high. This will split the field up and away is in turn 1.
Incredible moves having to be made here by the field. You see it splitting them up as they're going through this lap traffic. This is not what they want to see. If you're in the backside of this field, you want to have a clean opportunity. These lap cars all over the racetrack, not really allowing the leaders to get a clean look around them. We see Edward Schurner having a little bit of trouble getting by them, and now there's a lap car between him and these top 2. So the top 2 clean away from the rest of the field. Edward Schaffer now between the top three.
That's going to be even worse for Edward Schaffer because he's lost any help that he could produce behind, as Eric Stewart and there goes Craig Laumsager. Those two are not going to be able to help because they've fallen back so significantly, which means it all lies on the driver of the 64 with 4 laps to go. Can he make a move? Does he make a move? Or what happens here for the next handful of miles here for the Daytona International Speedway? Murray's still in control, but it may not be that way for that long.
Or do the Edwards work together and try and give Schaffer or Scherner the win and get Schaffer a lead lap finish? That's still in the possibility here to happen with Schaffer there in the 3rd place in line and Edward Scherner in the 3rd place on the racetrack. So as we're coming to 3 laps to go, Kenneth, there's still many things that can happen before this race is over.
And we saw it happen with Tyler Warner. He had to defend all the way to the white flag and the checker to even be considered a winner to start the season in 2021. And it may reside in the same hands, but this time with a different driver and a different car with a Chevrolet Camaro right at the front. The 8 of Tyler Murray going to have to play defense here against Scott Healy and any other driver behind that wants to take it away. They come down to the back straight away. Everybody single file. This puts Eric Stewart and Craig Laumsager back in the mix. They start to find themselves through. Meanwhile, the gap behind Kyle Benson, Justin Mons, and the 16 of Matt Roberts, they still lay behind. There may not be enough time coming off turn 4. They'll take 2 laps to go. 5 miles left for the Daytona International Speedway.
Everyone else's hope is going to be caution, and there it is. There's the caution, right as you were mentioning it, Kenneth, in the trial hole. A big wreck. Actually, no caution yet. The admins have not thrown it.
No yellow as we speak right now. 2 laps to go, but as of the moment, I think Tyler Murray might have had a brown pants moment. He did not want to see that yellow come out as he stays on the racetrack. Everybody lurks right now behind, but as of the moment, the 8 of Tyler Murray still in control. Now 3 cars as everybody behind it separated. I was anticipating Laumsager, Stewart, and a handful of others to find their way in the pack, and now that has completely dissipated. So as they come off of turn 4, Tyler Murray will see the white flag one more time for the regular season finale at Daytona.
Laumsager is trying to get by the 20 of Edward Scherner back there, so them getting racing basically puts it in the top 2 with the lap car in the middle of them. So let's see what happens as we work our way through 1 and 2 for the final time. There we see the 8 of Tyler Murray with the 64 Scott Healy. Healy trying to go back-to-back and get his 3rd win of the season. What does he do to try and get around this 8? Does he get alongside him? We see Schaffer trying to get squirrely. He's trying to give him the push. They're getting racy behind. The 64 unable to make a move. They're going to 3 and 4. Can he make a move before it turns 3 and 4?
The 22 very loose. No move from Scott Healy just yet. The separation might be enough to help Tyler Murray to the end of this race. Final time off turn 4. Schaffer gets loose, but it is the 8 of Tyler Murray taking his first race win of 2021 from Daytona.
And a great job being very defensive on those closing laps, Kenneth, and it was able to notch him that first win. A Tyler won the first Daytona race, and another Tyler wins the second Daytona race. Fantastic effort from this 8-team all race, and they executed the green flag pit stops effectively to give himself the lead, and the fireworks will go off for this 8-team to celebrate. And I was curious, Kenneth. I was sold on the fact that with 2 laps to go, we were going to have that caution when we saw that wreck in the trial oval, but the admins let them race, and we were gifted to a fantastic finish.
And in the middle of the season, I remember talking with Tyler Murray after one of the races had concluded, and he had been a little bit dejected to the point where he's been close to race wins so far, and he had not had a checkered flag just yet. Now that will completely change, and he was going to make the playoffs anyway, but a win will definitely help his momentum going to Richmond next week. Tyler Murray gonna burn it down right in front of the virtual crowd here in the trial. There's Scott Healy and Edward Scherner, the 2 Camaros to celebrate with him. And a well-deserved victory coming down to the last lap. And Murray able to control it all to win.
And winning at Daytona, Kenneth, that's a big milestone in anybody's career, no matter what car you're racing in. A win at this racetrack in any series is big.
And so he'll burn it down, continue the celebration. We'll talk with him in just a couple of moments. But as we bring ourselves down to a close from this race here at Daytona, we'll take a look at your full race results, see exactly where every driver finished at the end of 100 laps. Here's Tyler Murray, first race win of the season comes tonight. Saw him control it all the way to the very end. Scott Healy, the winner from last week at Phoenix, continues a consistent run. He'll be second at the start-finish line. Edward Scher will end up in the top 3 with Craig Launsager and Justin Mons completing your top 5. Kyle Benson will be behind him in 6th. Matt Roberts will come to finish 7th. Nicholas Vizuzzi will fall back in 8th. Eric Schaffer will be 1 lap down. You saw him loose off of turn 4. He comes locked with a top 10. Brandon Gillis will be 10th at the start-finish line after he started 9th tonight.
And the rest of the field, you see right here, Dustin Webb will finish a lap down in 11th. CJ Munier, who stayed out, led a couple laps, did come down pit road, will finish in 12th. Brandon T. Banks will finish in 13th, followed by Eric Stewart and Cody Ivey. Christopher Bishop finishes 3 laps down. He was in that crucial playoff battle. Unfortunately for him, no outsider won, and he may just end up keeping that last playoff spot. So a fortunate circumstance for him there. Tyler Warner will finish 17th, your Daytona winner from the first time around. Ricky Rosner will finish in 18th. Michael Newbrawl will finish in 19th, with Pete Bruni rounding out the top 20.
Behind them, the final drivers to finish this race. Cody Kinsey, when toppling over on the back straightaway, he towed. He was not able to get back in this race. Jovi Saguiped will be 57 laps down in 22nd. Brian M. Smith, a strong end, or at least start to this race, ends up, he puts it behind the garage in 23rd. Robert Parrott in the 6th goes 84 laps down in 24th. Chris Massey not able to start this race. He did not make the grid in the 83 machine. He will be 25th after this is all said and done. Well, it'll be our time now to talk with your race winner, Tyler Murray. This is the first time we see him in victory lane all season long, and he finally gets it done. So we will go ahead and bring in the driver of the 8 machine from victory lane here at the World Center of Racing. And Tyler, I remember talking with you earlier this season, and you had talked to me about just how close you were for a lot of wins, and that certainly was the case. You had yourself in contention many times in 2021. You finally do it here tonight. You control the final 20 or so laps of this race, even more to end this one. You take your first race win of the year. How do you feel after this one?
Dude, it's an unbelievable feeling. I want to start off simply by thanking Scott Healy and Edward Scher, and Craig was up there with us in that front group coming off pit road. Appreciate those guys staying in line, working with me. Definitely got to buy them a beer or two. But yeah, it was just that was a definitely a different feeling than restrictor plates normally are tonight. It's normally, you know, we're used to running 2-3 wide and being able to make both lanes work, but it's even different from Talladega earlier this season. Talladega earlier this year, you had to run bottom, you couldn't even get the top going, and tonight, whenever somebody got through that bubble and got to your bumper, it just made the whole back of the car start sliding around. So I mean, happy we held on to it. Had some great pushes there from Healy and Scher. You know, just worked out, put ourselves in contention, put ourselves where we need to be.
And it worked out perfectly. And before this race, you guys had some experience with the Aero model, or at least the Super Speedway model with Cup cars at Talladega. But it had been a while before you guys had been on a Super Speedway. You guys come to Daytona, and the things unfolded how they fell. And for you, how challenging was it to even try to make passes and position yourself in a position to win? Because I know that a lot of drivers tried to make moves on the outside. None of them were really successful. We had some battles for the lead, but ultimately it was about how many people you had behind you. And of course, even at the end of this race, it was down to pit strategy.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of pit strategy, stuff like that. You know, I'd been running up in the top 5, top 6 early in the race when we first started going, and then we had a huge checkup, and I got turned and hit in the left rear, and that kind of put us at a bit of a disadvantage. We had some damage early on, and a couple restarts after that. I wasn't able to get down to the bottom quick enough, and things were getting singled out, and we were kind of just hanging out in the second pack, trying to get what we need done, and you know, it just kind of worked out. It was Benson and I were running up front there, my teammate Benson, and we made the call a couple times not to come down pit road on a couple of those back-to-back cautions because we knew we were going to make it on one more stop no matter what we did. So we just decided to keep the track position. And, I think I was a little shorter on fuel than everybody else around us in that lead group, that last pit stop, obviously, because I was leading the pack the whole time, and, came off of 2 and called that we were pitting. And luckily everybody else up in that front group came with us, and, just got to give it to the virtual pit crew. They nailed that pit stop, got in real good. Thought Craig was going to beat me off pit road, but, had a good battle coming off, and we just kind of broke away and ran with it.
And you certainly do. And not only do you get to run away with your first race win of 2021, but you also get to go straight into the playoffs next week at Richmond. A lot of momentum on your side. So with yourself being locked in before this race even began, getting this win now, number one, how much momentum does this put on your back when you go to Richmond next week? And number two, what's your mindset for Richmond?
It feels good. We obviously always run up front here at the restrictor plates, lead a lot of laps here. Feels good to have one fall in my favor and be able to get it done tonight. Had a couple good runs at some of the shorter tracks like New Hampshire earlier this year. So, Richmond's not one of my strongest tracks, but we're gonna turn it around, and we're gonna try to roll in with some momentum. Those 3 bonus points heading into the playoffs, they're gonna mean all the difference. And, I wanted to get them tonight, and luckily I was able to get it done.
Well, you were able to get it done, and of course, I think you can get some Pit Viper sunglasses. You'll be cool straight to the playoffs next week. But a big congratulations here from Daytona. But before we send you off to go celebrate here at the World Center Racing, is there anybody you'd just like to thank for making this possible? Any teams, sponsors, or anybody else that makes it happen?
I want to start off. We got Memorial Day coming up. So I want to thank everybody who's either an active service member, a veteran, anybody like that, anybody whose families have been a part of the military. Really appreciate all we do, or all they do for us, and that's why we were running that special scheme tonight. The whole team was. Want to give a shout out to somebody who's close to one of our team members, SSG Tim Showers. He's had an impact on Kyle's life, so it's my teammate, so he's obviously going to have an impact on the whole team. Want to thank Big Fast Racing, even the guys who couldn't make it tonight. Kyle, Tyler, Austin, Roman, Ryan, all those guys for showing up week in, week out, always, talking. And, I want to thank everybody in the 4-Wide Racing League, and I want to thank you guys for sitting up in the booth and putting on a great broadcast for us. And one last special shout out to Healy and Scherer again for making sure that I got that done.
Well, you get to celebrate from Daytona, first checkered flag in hand. Congratulations, Tyler. We look forward to seeing you from Richmond next week, but we'll let you celebrate here from Daytona. Thank you for joining us.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you.
Tyler Murray walks away. His first win comes here at the Daytona International Speedway. We'll look back to second, and as the driver of the 8 was thanking the driver behind him, Scott Healy ends up finishing in second after his win at Phoenix last Wednesday night. He's sitting down pit road, at least at the moment, with Francisco Bacallao.
Scott, we know you got the win last week, very dominating. One position short here tonight. What was the biggest takeaway from this different plate package than what we're used to seeing here at Daytona?
It definitely does not suck you up to the back of the car if you don't have a person behind you. Having a third party behind you helps you in that extent. Other than that, if you're by yourself with the guy in front of you, you are not catching up to the leader.
And we saw most of the night had its fair share of green flag racing. The middle was riddled with some yellows. What was it like running those last couple of laps, seeing the race go green and having to make those green flag pit stops, knowing that the race win was probably going to be decided on who came out in front?
It was pretty good. I like the long green run, strategy calls and everything lined up for me. It just didn't work out to my favor. But being in P2 is better than being last place. You know what I mean? So I'm happy to be in P2.
And with this P2 finish, we move on into the playoffs next week, beginning at Richmond. So, what are your thoughts about going into that race and beginning a potential race for the championship, if you will?
Taking my time, learning the line, stuff like that. Definitely patience is key. Try to avoid wrecks as best as possible and try to get good finishes.
And who do you have to thank for helping you put together this great regular season and a great second place finish here tonight?
You guys for doing an amazing job. Quikrete, my team RSR, friends, family.
Thanks you for taking the time here, Scott, and we wish you luck going into the playoffs.
Thank you so much.
Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend.
You too, man.
Scott Healy, Phoenix winner last week, comes home second at the end of it all. Fantastic job for him to set himself right where we'll head to the playoffs at a short track where he's got 2 wins already in that front. So he's probably got a lot of momentum and optimism in that front as well. We'll go ahead and talk to the driver who finishes third at the end of it all. Driver the 20, and one of the nice paint schemes that we saw under the lights tonight, the driver of the 20, that is Edward Sure. We'll bring him in trackside. And Edward, I think this race turned on its head in many different facets. There was, number one, the aero model with the super speedways that a lot of drivers are trying to make passes with. Then came some of the wrecks we saw into the halfway mark of this race. And then all of a sudden, it goes green with a green flag pit stop to end this one. How was that through your eyes behind the wheel?
I mean, yeah, you basically said it right on the dime. The aero package really made a lot of things hectic and crazy. Other than that, I think overall it was a good race. We managed to slip through most of the wrecks all night. Did some pretty good wreck avoidance. Got involved in one of them, which cost my fast repair early with about like the 50 lap mark or so. And then we just played strategy with it. I was planning on hanging around with Tyler and Scott throughout most of the night tonight. My original goal was to help Justin Mons around the whole night, and didn't really get around to getting with him involved a lot. We were together on that last pit stop, but a lot of calls were different than everybody else. I believe Scott took 2, and I think I was the first one off 4, and the way I gapped myself on pit road, I was able to manage with Tyler and Scott, who I believe both took 2. And I was able to hang around with them in the end. I told Tyler basically don't worry about me because I didn't think I had much help behind me to push me to the front, because I wasn't crazy about either pushing somebody to the front or being pushed because of how crazy the aero package is. But I basically told him, like, don't worry about me because I don't think I'm really going to play a factor. But I'm happy for Tyler overall. I mean, he's a great dude, and I appreciate everything he's done for me and welcomed me back into 4 wide and everything. And overall, it was a great race for everyone here and the Rowdy Energy team.
And certainly a great race here for you. And going into this one, I know that there was that sort of last stretch where you had some lap cars, where you're potentially thinking about any moves within the final 15 laps to try to go for the lead?
It crossed my mind. I'll admit it did. But I was nervous that some of them would have damage, so I thought that would implement me losing spots, which I really didn't. I was mainly paying attention to what Craig was doing behind me. Whatever he did, I basically was going to go with him. Which ended up paying out. I got stuck behind Eric, which was fine because in the end, I think he was planning to help his teammate Scott try to do something, which I tried to help Eric to push Scott, but me being so far up behind him, it gave him a lot of trouble steering the car and not being able to get up to Scott's rear to push him. So overall, I don't think it really was going to be able to much to do, to be honest.
Well, nonetheless, you end up with a 3rd place finish. I think I'm going to ask the final one before we let you say your thanks. What was the motive behind this paint scheme? This looked good on the lights. It's an Alex Bowman, Rowdy Energy sort of combo. What was the decision behind this one?
So I recently went to the Dover race, and I was able to experience the 1, 2, 3, 4 finish for Hendrick Motorsports, and being able to see Bowman's scheme live drew me an image of how I can implement Rowdy Energy with Bowman's scheme, because I think we can all agree Bowman has probably like the best looking ally scheme that's ever been made so far.
Yep.
And
Yes.
I mean, it just looks way too good to not be shown out more on like any other different models or any sponsors or anything. So I wanted to give it a try, and I'm really happy with how it came out. And a big shout out to my buddy RJ for making this for me. I really appreciate him doing that.
I'm a fan of that scheme, Edward. It looks really nice, and the pink and the blue, it works very nice, and it reminds me of Miami Vice, which is a color combination that I'm a fan of, and I know Kenneth is as well. So it's a great scheme, and we appreciate you running it.
Yeah, thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
You know what? A little bit salty I am as a Jimmy Johnson fan because he didn't get the best ally paint schemes, and number 2, he didn't even win into the damn thing. So I guess it made it a little different, but nonetheless, you put that car into the 3rd place position here tonight. Before we let you go, know you've already said a little bit of thanks to some people, but who else do you have to thank for making tonight's effort happen?
I mean, basically everybody in 4 wide, you guys. I appreciate Rowdy Energy, Team Razor, KO Racing, Going Racing Podcast. Be sure to check it out on Spotify and YouTube. and basically all my supporters out there who support me week in and week out. My friends, Reedy, Justin Mons, Tyler Murray, Kyle Benson, Karma, RJ, Combat, everybody, my family, and basically everybody that drives me to be the best driver I can be out there week in and week out.
Well, we certainly thank you, Edward, for taking the time to talk with us, and of course, wishing you a safe and happy Memorial Day weekend, and congratulations here from the Daytona International Speedway here for the final regular season race of the season. Hopefully, we see you out at Richmond, and we wish you the best of luck moving forward.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
Edward Schur goes in to third to end tonight's race, capping off our driver interviews for tonight. You know, I guess some people say the Clash win in 2019 counts. I don't think it does, because I think Jimmy practically wrecked the entire field. Nonetheless, we go back up here, recap, and the regular season is now over. We've had 10 drivers find their way in. Here are the points. I believe the points have changed, but overall, this is the picture that you're going to see fight for a title next week at the Richmond Raceway. Francisco, we see the collection of drivers. We've seen them over the course of this season. How do we fare when we go to Richmond in the short track?
It's going to be very chaotic. Short track racing coupled with playoff intensity, and you're going to get a recipe for either disaster or just pure chaos. And I'm interested to see just how that race will play out, generally speaking. I'm not exactly sure who will prevail with the low downforce package with that small spoiler that we'll have for that race. And you and I have covered, I think, at least a Richmond race or two. So with those recent updates that Richmond Raceway had when the track properties got altered, it has a little bit of more grooves to be used. And I'll be interested in seeing just who's able to make those grooves work, and with the way the tires wear there now. So it's going to be very fun to watch, Kenneth, and I'm excited to see who makes a statement in that first playoff race.
It's going to be fantastic to watch for sure. And of course, if you want to tune in to all the action for the 4Wide Racing Cup Series and their campaign of 2021, you can continue watching it next Wednesday night when we move to the Richmond Raceway, the first race of the playoffs. And we start with 10 drivers. We'll slim it all the way down to about 4 when we go to Charlotte after a couple of weeks' time. That coverage will begin, of course, next Wednesday at about 9:10 p.m. Eastern. You'll find myself and Francisco Bacallao along for the call as well, all the way until we crown a champion for this season. Before we let you go, or before we conclude this broadcast, a big thanks to all the people of the armed forces, everybody that works in the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, every single facet of the armed forces, and the veterans, all the people that make at least our freedoms viable here in this country, make all the sacrifices for us as well. We thank you so much. And of course, our Memorial Day weekend will be spent, of course, having fun with some racing, but Monday, we know we always keep you all in mind. So a big thank you for everyone who keeps us safe, keeps us free here in this country. And of course, a big thank you to all the people that make things happen at the 4Wide Racing League. For owner Tyler Murray, Nicholas Vizzuti, Matt Roberts, Roman Long, Craig Launsauger, and for Austin Reedy. And of course, for our race winner, Tyler Murray, a big congratulations to him. First race win of 2021 here at the Daytona International Speedway. And for all of us at MaxSpeedTV, for my colleague in the booth, Francisco Bacallao, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long from Northern Florida. We'll step to Richmond, Virginia next week, and the Commonwealth, where we go playoff racing.